Good morning. It's great to see everybody in Zoom land. And we're really hoping that February we're all going to be together. But as of now, someone's running towards me. Was that much better? You all recognize me, though. You knew who it was. Anyway, good morning again. And as I said, I hope this is our last Zoom meeting. We're hoping to be together in February in Pasadena, but here we are today, and it's just good to see your faces. I'm going to be asking now for a moment of silence, honoring the officers. Now, fortunately, no officers lost their lives in the line of duty since our last meeting, but we still want to have a moment of silence for officers who did lose their lives, not in the line of duty. So please join me in that moment. Thank you. Ms. Nunez, will you please take roll call?
Sure. Good morning. Barcelona.
Here.
Berg.
Here.
Brazil.
Here.
Huey.
Here.
Donellan.
Here.
Doyle.
Here.
Dudley.
Here.
Ewell.
Here.
Long.
Here.
McMahon.
Here.
Medrano.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
O'Rourke.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Tubbs.
Here.
Thank you. I would now like to introduce the Post Advisory Committee Chair, Arten Barron. Are you there, Arten? Why don't you wave?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. And to my right is the Legal Counsel, William Toby Darden, and to my left is the Post Executive Director, Manny Alvarez. This time, the Executive Director would like to address the Commission. Executive Director Alvarez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Commissioners. Thank you for participating today and for all your support and leadership on the Commission. I'd like to take a few minutes, like I always do at the very beginning, to address where we've been since the last Commission meeting and kind of where we're going to go. Just together, it sounded like I'm doing a marketing pitch or a sales pitch, which I'm not. But I think we have done quite a bit of work since the last meeting at the end of August. So since the last meeting in August, we've held one Academy Consortium on September 30th. We did that online with all the academies over the course of half a day. We've held a Train the Trainer course for Academy instructors on procedural justice and implicit bias this month. We've issued first ever distance learning grants to law enforcement agencies and academia. You'll hear more about that today. We're finalizing use of force guidelines. You'll hear more about that today, as well as training. We had I believe, 2 workshops, if not 1 workshop, on both the guidelines and the training since the last meeting. We started working on crowd management guidelines. We had a workshop in October. We issued or distributed a self-paced course on gun violence restraining orders on September 30th. Hopefully you all saw that. We also issued a 2-hour training course, an online course on mental health, responding to individuals in crisis. We started the curriculum development to redo the campus law enforcement course in October. We're trying to redo the curriculum as we mentioned in February. We started to create a de-escalation course, an in-service course out of training program services for the field. We started that in October. We held a training manager symposium last week over the course of 3 half days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We used a commercial vendor for that symposium. We had 750 people who registered and listened to the presentations. I want to single out Commissioner Brazil, who was the keynote speaker for one of those days. We always kicked it off with a keynote speaker. So thank you, Commissioner Brazil, for your time and your presentation on Thursday morning. Obviously, we've had to keep the lights on in the building and pay the bills and all that. And I think that has been going on very well. Hopefully all our bills are getting paid. You're not hearing about us not keeping up in that regard. We're starting to address internally, we're in the second stage of our lease with the building, so we're already engaging in those discussions with the Department of General Services. We've been undergoing an audit. It's a routine audit that we have to do every 3 years by the State Personnel Board. We submitted all of our documentation, which took us weeks to put together, but we submitted that in September and at the beginning of October. And obviously our computer services folks have been busy hosting these types of meetings and getting them set up for us. We've had a number of them, as you can imagine, as well as doing some upgrades to EDI and some upgrades to our system related to accounting for ETRRs. And then lastly, we submitted a report to the legislature in September pursuant to SB 94 or Penal Code 13503.5. I've mentioned previously regarding each training by each agency, by course, by the number of officers. It was a massive, massive data dump that we had to provide them. So that was the first time we've had to do that. We'll have to do that every year from here forward, but that was submitted in September. So some of the things that I didn't mention that we will also be working on between now and the next commission meeting in February. I've mentioned previously that we are required pursuant to AB 332 to collect data on academy failures in the status of students going through EVOC and firearms. We've been collecting data for over a year between July 1 and June 30th on everything from firearms, EVOC, and then we've expanded it to the written tests, the scenario tests, the physical fitness requirements, and such. So we'll be submitting that report to the legislature by April 1st, pursuant to that bill from last year. Obviously, we're going to be going into the next budget cycle, and we should hear, obviously, in January what the new budget is. So we'll have some data for you at the February meeting, and we'll be putting together our training contracts from January to February. So we should have that ready to go to you by February. Also, we anticipate releasing a bunch of online courses. Admittedly, we're behind with some of them just because the video shoots, obviously we can't do a lot of those things. And then we're just, COVID has slowed us down a little bit. So we anticipate releasing initial response to natural disasters at the end of October. We anticipate releasing a recruit training officer online course, an academy director and coordinator orientation program in the month of November, a domestic violence update course in December, end of December, and a course on gun violence. I'm sorry, it's one course. Domestic violence update and gun violence restraining orders are addressed in there, as well as in January, a tutorial on how to use EDI. So that's where we're going. I missed one. We also have to address the senior and disability guidelines and model policy pursuant to SB 338. I believe we have to have that done by April. So we'll be starting work on that. Then lastly, I wanted to address some data points, some statistics that we've been putting out at some of our symposiums and training managers meetings and academy consortiums. First of all, before I even go to the data, I think we're going to speak a little bit today at the finance portion of the meeting. You'll see that our training the delivery of our training has definitely been delayed, both by post and by the field in taking training. The numbers are significantly less than the last CPT cycle. I think hopefully that's understandable with COVID. Second of all, if I can throw up on the screen just for informational purposes, these are the graduation rates. We put this before the Academy Consortium. These are the number of intensive RBC graduates per year. You could see we've been averaging about 4,000 per year. 2019, we had the most of almost 5,000. 2020, and this is based on fiscal years, 2020, we had the least at 2,300. I suspect the numbers are gonna be low again this year because obviously COVID is still happening. It's unclear as to what's gonna happen in the future with those numbers. Are we behind that we're not gonna be able to get enough people in the academies because we're behind, or are we gonna stay at a lower number in the future based on budgets and budget cuts and such? But I thought it was important that you see that. The other component of it is we broke it up so you could see how many graduates the community colleges are putting through and how many the law enforcement agency academies are putting through. And it's about 25 to 30% for the colleges and about 75 to 70% for the law enforcement agencies. Okay, next slide, Tobias. Wait for a second for the next slide to pop up. Okay, the next one is we presented this at the Training Manager Symposium last week on the first day, really with a message to try to get agencies and presenters to get their courses certified. You know, we always consistently hear that it takes forever to get a course certified by post, and that really isn't the case. I mean, obviously we want to shrink the time year after year, but I wanted to present the numbers to you so you could see the good work that the staff has been doing in terms of reducing the numbers. So if you look at 2015, 2016, the presenter, that number, that day one starts as soon as they start entering a keystroke in EDI. If they walk away from their computer for a week, it's already 7 days late, or it's 7 days have already counted on the clock. From the time they submitted, obviously, to post, 66 days in 2015, then the clock starts with post. From the time we start reviewing it, we've removed in 2017, 18, we removed one layer of bureaucracy where we had 4 people touching the post course for certification. Now it's down to 3. And then obviously if you multiply those or add those 2 numbers together, you get the total time to certify the course. It's also important to note in 2017, we started the new pilot with the new certification process with the Tier 1 and Tier 2 certification process to simplify things for the field. That pilot continued in 2018 and became finalized 2018-19. Also in 2018-19, we started with the Instructor Resume Builder to simplify and reduce the time that presenters had to keystroke enter resumes. It all became final in 2019, 2020, and you can see the numbers have gone down since then. So at the bottom, I showed the decline from 2015 to 16 for presenters, 36% decline. For post, the time it takes post to review and approve the course, 79% decline, and then a 58% decline overall from 2015 to 2021. Okay, thank you, Tobias. You can take that off. Okay, the next thing I'd like to address are just compliance audits. So as you know, we do compliance audits at every agency for their personnel files to make sure they adhere to post requirements as well as to the government code. We have 608 agencies that are in the system as of today. We've reviewed 367 of those agencies. We're 60% complete, but we're 80% through the year. So we're a little bit behind. We try to get to 100% every year. We may not make it this year, but we should be close. And then lastly, I wanted to address one little point with the quality assurance program. So as you know, we go out and review courses to make sure that they're consistent with what is in EDI and that they're being delivered properly. The one point that I wanted to mention, just to demonstrate how the field is impacted by training and COVID, as of October 21, 38 courses that we were scheduled to review have been canceled due to COVID. So hopefully that paints a picture of where things are. And again, not a sales pitch, but I just wanted to show the good work that everybody's been doing at Post, especially since most of this has transpired since August, just over the course of 2 months. That concludes my remarks, Madam Chair. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Well, once again, we're all very proud of the work that you and your staff have done. I think it's quite remarkable, given that I was here in 2016, that there's been a 79% reduction on post end in terms of certifying courts. And I remember that we started out as a pilot project. That went well, but I don't think anyone ever expected to see that. And that is probably, or was probably, the #1 complaint I heard in the field. It just takes so long to certify those courses. So congratulations to you and your staff. Okay, commissioners, we're now going to start public comment. If there's any interest in responding to any of the public comments, please take notes and you'll be able to respond at the end of the public comment period. As to the public comment, this is the time set aside for members of the public to comment on items on the commission agenda pursuant to commission policy. The commission chair, that is me, will manage the public comment period in deference to the commission's workload and meeting time constraint. Up to 15 minutes is allotted at the beginning of each commission meeting for public comments on items on the agenda. Based on recent events, more people than usual may want to address the commission. Therefore, if required, we will go longer than 15 minutes, but may limit the period to no more than 1 hour as we have many topics on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to speak are asked to limit their remarks to no more than 3 minutes each. If we have many people who wish to speak on the same topic, I, as the chair, may intervene and will ask that you limit remarks to no more than 1 minute. Pursuant to existing commission policy, the chair may conclude the public comment period if multiple speakers are voicing repetitive or similar statements and the 15-minute public comment period has expired. Please be advised that the commission cannot take any actions on items not on the agenda. Please remember that this meeting is being transcribed, so I may politely interrupt and ask you to repeat or speak slowly or clearly so your comments can be correctly captured in the transcript. If there is anyone watching who would like to address the commission during public comment, please call in to the number shown on the screen at this time. We will take the calls on a first come, first served basis. If other persons are in the queue waiting to speak, you will be placed on hold until it's your turn to address the commission. You will know when it's your turn to speak when you hear that you are unmuted. Once again, you will know if it's your turn to speak when you hear the word unmuted. We will wait for approximately 1 minute to allow for individuals to call in. When it is your turn, if you wish, please state your name and organization. Okay, now we're waiting for the public comment calls.
Yeah, hello. My name is Ray Diaz. I'm a Special Agent Supervisor with the California Department of Justice. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to bring up an issue that not only affects me, but affects a number of highly qualified state and federal officers who have a vast amount of investigative experience. I know my time is very limited, so I'm just going to lay out the matter in the simplest way. Personally, I'm a 830.1 peace officer with the state of California. I have over 20 years of investigative experience and have managed criminal investigations for the California Attorney General's office to include public corruption, financial fraud, human trafficking, organized crime, narcotics, and some of the more sensitive high-level criminal investigations my department conducts. I have a vast amount of experience working with local and federal prosecutors. However, I, like many highly qualified state and federal investigators, cannot apply for a criminal investigator job with any district attorney's office because we do not maintain a basic post certificate. I personally maintain a specialized post certificate. In fact, many of my colleagues who have been hired by DOJ and sent through a basic academy by DOJ will be able to apply for criminal investigator jobs with a DA's office, even though they have no patrol experience, and because they meet the actual prerequisite for these criminal investigator jobs in that they have the appropriate amount of investigative experience. I work with a number of federal agents, including FBI, who have a tremendous amount of investigative experience. To say an FBI agent who has years of investigative experience cannot conduct criminal investigations for a local DA's office because they do not maintain a basic post certificate, in my opinion, is just not being smart, progressive, or diligent over the fact that more than ever, law enforcement agencies should open up their candidate pool so they can hire the best candidates possible. Regardless of how large the candidate pool is, the hiring agency will still be able to hire who they believe is the most qualified candidate for the job. Now, this matter was looked into to a certain extent about a decade ago, but I think a lot has changed over that last decade. So I'm just asking for the Post Commission to look into this issue, discuss the matter internally. I believe you have a top-notch executive director, Mr. Ramirez. I'm confident he understands the fine details of my concerns. I would recommend consulting with the relevant parties like the District Attorney Investigators Association and look into what can be done to include highly qualified state and federal criminal investigators in the hiring process of non-patrol investigative agencies without disqualifying candidates based on the lone fact that they do not maintain a basic post certificate. Personally, I think it's a no-brainer to have more skilled candidates in the candidate pool, more backgrounds, more diversity, different experiences in the law enforcement arena is a good thing. I appreciate you listening to my issue, and I'm more than happy to assist the Post Commission with anything you might need from me in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And you were half right. We do have an excellent executive director, but his name is Mr. Alvarez, not Ramirez.
I'm sorry.
That's
I apologize.
perfectly okay. I just thought later you would realize that and feel terrible. I just wanted you to feel terrible
I
right
would.
now.
Yeah.
Right now. Anyway, I just need a little more clarification. Are you asking about being hired by district attorneys' offices, or are you asking about being able to engage in officer-involved shootings after your office takes those on?
No, I'm saying right now I could not apply for a position with the district attorney's office because a district attorney investigator at a district attorney's office requires a basic post certificate. I have a specialized post certificate, and this changed approximately in 1998. District attorney's offices started requiring the basic post certificate. So I'm contending, not just with us, not just with state investigators. I believe there's a number of highly qualified state investigators that do not maintain the RBC, but there's also a number of highly qualified federal investigators that do not maintain the RBC that could do these jobs. And I'm just saying that they should be able to compete for them, because ultimately it's going to be up to the hiring agency to be able to hire who they want regardless. So I'm just asking Post to look into this issue and see if there are any ways that there could be a waiver that's created, a potential bridge course, because I think more than ever, with
Okay,
we should have.
I get it.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about DOJ people doing officer-involved shooting investigations and whether they required this certificate or not. But you're actually talking about being hired by a district attorney's office.
Correct.
Okay. Executive Alvarez, would you like to decide how you want to proceed with this?
I think the best approach would be for us to put something on the agenda for February so we could address the issues and get some direction from the commission as to what you would like. The post staff did address this approximately 10 or so years ago with creating a bridge course. And the way it was, my understanding from what I've seen on a white paper, was it was parsed out. There's two academies. There's the SIBC and the RBC, and it was parsed out hour by hour what was missing from the SIBC to the RBC, and it was a lot. It was quite a bit. So the decision back in the day was, well, if they're going to have to go through all this other different training, they might as well just go through the whole academy all over again. I don't know if that's the right approach or if there's some middle ground, but I think we could present it back to the commission in February in a formal agenda item, if that's okay, and then get some direction.
Okay. We will address this as a formal agenda item in February. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay, is there another public speaker?
This is Greg DeGier. I'm the civil rights advocate of the ARC of California. I addressed their commission back in your some time ago at a meeting in West Sacramento to thank you for producing the update on the post-model hate crimes policy. There's been some further progress Post has made since then on that, and since we live in a country where we're all gotten very good at criticizing each other when we think criticism is warranted, I think I need to, for my own sanity, among other reasons, just try to be a lot better at thanking people when they deserve it. In June, the 22 civil rights groups wrote Post asking for some reviews of the Academy course, the Learning Domain course on hate crimes, the new, fairly new Learning Portal course, and the hate crimes model policy. Director Alvarez responded within days, which impressed everybody, I think, and has made several of the updates that we asked for. And I know there are others that are still in progress is considering, and I want to thank particularly Director Alvarez and Commissioner Moore for his involvement in this. I just want to say, I've said this to other people, and it occurs to me I've never said it to anybody from Post, that I've worked with Post off and on for about 18 years now, first as a legislative staffer working on legislation that affected Post, and then more recently as a lobbyist, and now as a volunteer civil rights advocate. And I've besides working on legislation and advocacy, I've been a subject matter expert on I think 6 different Post projects. And I think it's fair to say that of all the state agencies I've worked with, Post is probably been the best at simply being responsible about, diligent about carrying out the law. That every time I've ever seen that there's a statute that tells Post to do something, you do it, and you do it pretty well usually, almost universally. And if you make a mistake and somebody points it out, you fix it. And I don't want to slander any other state agencies, but I can't think of another one that I can say that about so categorically. As a result of that good experience, now whenever I'm involved with anybody in any discussion of any problem in California that may touch on law enforcement, one of my first thoughts is, what can we get Post to do about this? Now, I realize no state agency is going to be particularly grateful for having a lot of more work to do, but I guess that's the price you pay for doing a good job, and I want to thank you for it.
Thank you, Greg. It's good to hear from you. I think we probably worked together a dozen years ago on Post, so it's great to see that you're appreciating the agency. I agree with you 100%. And yes, I've been the recipient of Mr. Alvarez's instant responses, and it's always a pleasure. And I agree, Commissioner Moore has done a fantastic job. So thank you so much for both those comments. Okay, is there anybody else in the queue? No, okay. So our first item is the approval of the action summary and meeting minutes from the August 26, 2020 commission meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Motion, Donlin.
Second?
Second, Moore.
Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call vote.
Barcelona,
Alan, you have to unmute.
Barcelona,
Sorry, having a little difficulty with my earbuds again. Just trying to fix them.
We get a vote from you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything.
It's so tempting to change what we said, but I'm not going to do it, Alan. The question was, we're getting a vote now on the motion to approve the minutes, and we have a first and a second. And now we're doing a roll call vote to see if you also agree that we should approve the minutes.
I do, aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Berg,
Aye.
Brazil,
Aye.
Bowie,
Yes.
Donilon,
Aye.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Aye.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Aye.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano,
Aye.
Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, there has been approval, and moving on to the consent items. We'll be having a presentation on consent items 6 through 17. So that's 11 items, and then also 19. So a total of 12 items. Would the commission like a report on any of the other consent agenda items? Hearing nothing, we'll start with 6. At this time, I will call upon Assistant Executive Director Maria Sandoval to provide us a report on decertification of peace officers. Maria?
Thank you and good morning, Commissioners. During the roundtable commission meeting held on August 26, 2020, Commissioners requested post staff research the Commission's authority to decertify or render the basic certificate null and void. This action taken against an individual will be based upon actions or inactions during the scope of duties as a peace officer. The Penal Code has 2 very specific sections relating to the Commission's ability to decertify police officers that were put into effect January 1st, 2004. Penal Code Section 13503 H and I states, the Commission shall not have the authority to adopt or carry out a regulation that authorizes withdrawal or revocation of a certificate previously issued to a peace officer pursuant to this chapter. I states, except as specifically provided by law, the Commission shall not have the authority to cancel a certificate previously issued to a peace officer pursuant to this chapter. Penal Code Section 13506 states, the Commission may adopt those regulations as necessary to carry out the purposes of this chapter. The Commission shall not have the authority to adopt or carry out a regulation that authorizes a withdrawal or revocation of a certificate previously issued to a peace officer pursuant to this chapter. Except as specifically provided by law, the Commission shall not have the authority to adopt regulations providing for the cancellation of a certificate. The analysis is based upon Penal Code Sections 13503 and 13506. Unfortunately, the Commission has no authority to suspend or revoke individual certificates. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Ed Madrano, I have a question. Did we do any research with respect to what the impetus was for that legislation, for that change? It seems kind of counterintuitive to what, the conversations we're having now, and to specifically exempt posts from having that authority. Do we know why?
I do not know. I think that possibly, Commissioner Long and/or my counterpart Scott Loggins may be able to provide you with some information on that.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Scott Loggins. I'm Maria's counterpart. Yes, there is a history. About 20 years ago, there was a bill put forth before either the Assembly or the Senate. And during the course of the legislative analysis, the thought was that at that time, the perspective from the legislature was that posts should not be in the business of either licensing or decertifying officers. And as you can imagine, 20 years later, the tides have changed, and we're looking at law enforcement in a different light. And in reference to Mr. Long, he was working with the legislature, and Commissioner Long may have a little bit further insight as to the discussions that had taken place within the Capitol at that time.
That's the bottom line, Scott. I concur with what you said. It was just a determination that it would be we'd have to do a remake of post, essentially, to put them in that position. And the decision at that time was, we don't need to go there.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe part of the concern of the legislature was it would be a significant heavy lift for a small agency like the Commission on Posts to take on.
Yeah, exactly. There would have to be, re-envisioned post.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions regarding this issue? I don't see any. Okay, thank you, Maria. Now, the second, we're on to number 7, report on post-continuity of government during COVID-19 pandemic. At this time, I'll call upon Executive Director Manny Alvarez to provide us with the report on post-continuity of government during COVID pandemic. Manny?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. As we've mentioned at the last couple of commission meetings on May 7th, Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N-63-20 that allows Post to waive certain requirements due to COVID or to pause certain requirements were required by the executive order to advise the commission of those waivers that we have issued. So this is the purpose of that. We are running a list of the waivers that we issued. So some of the names that some of the agencies that you'll see on this chart that's on the screen have already been presented at the June commission meeting, and we'll just keep it going. But we've issued requalification waivers for 1008 and 1005 approximately 15 or so times. I didn't look at the exact number up on the screen to count them. But so far we've approved all but one. We denied one waiver request, and then one waiver request we approved, and then the agency ultimately came back and rescinded that waiver. So that is the formality of complying with the executive order. Also, there's a question about COVID and COVID exposure during post-training courses. So as many of you know, the commission passed a regulation last year that required presenters and agencies to report injuries that required more than basic first aid on any post course, whether it's in the academy or in service, to notify Post via a portal that we have. We have been receiving those. Obviously, COVID does not fall within those parameters, so we may not be getting all the data that is out there. In terms of what we have received so far for in-service training courses, we've had one documented exposure from COVID with one of our SLI students. Unfortunately, that student passed, a sergeant from Richmond Police Department. We've had 2 in the management course, both from the same agency. And we've had one that we've learned about from one of the presenters in Region 6, which is the Santa Clara County, Monterey County, San Benito, San Mateo County region on one of their courses. Aside from that, we haven't heard anything more about in-service courses. We have had some exposure, significant exposure at 3 basic academies. And what I mean by significant is, 15, 20 to 30 students at one time testing positive for COVID. That was early on during COVID. 2 of those agencies, as I mentioned at the last commission meeting, or at the June commission meeting, started doing online training for their basic academy, and then have reverted back once the exposure was under control. But that is all in terms of COVID exposure. That's all we know at this point. That concludes my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Tubbs. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. And Manny, just a couple clarification questions to make sure I just understand the process. So to apply for what is there a criterion that Post is using when granting waivers, or is it just if you apply, you automatically get one?
No, the waivers are issued because primarily because they can't get through the training course because of COVID. So a perfect example is if you come from out of state, which is what most of these are. You come from out of state, you get a waiver or you submit an application to have Post review your work in another state. and you're training in another state. Post will issue a waiver for that if you comply with all the training requirements in California. But on top of that, you have to go through a 3-week requalification course. Early on, those requalification courses were all canceled, so people couldn't go to those courses. So the waiver temporarily pauses that requirement for the 3-week course. They still have to go through it. As soon as the governor lifts the executive order or terminates the state of emergency, they either have the training under their belt or they can no longer be peace officers. So they still have to get it, but for the time being, they don't have to go through the recall course if an agency wants to swear them in. Those are primarily the waivers that are being issued at this time.
Okay, and it's probably beyond the scope of the work of Post, but just given the conversations we're having, given everything that's happening with violent crime and things rising in cities during COVID-19, et cetera, do the agencies, do they have to have any plan to mitigate or ensure that the important information that we spend hours developing and providing as part of our certification, is it just they don't receive that until COVID's over, but they're still operating as peace officers? Is that an accurate understanding?
So they have to comply in advance with all the training requirements. So for instance, there's a certain amount of domestic violence training that we require in California. They have to hit those number of hours before they can even receive the application waiver. So they are certified for all of the training requirements that are done in the academy, but then we also require them to go through an additional course that covers the penal code and everything else. So in theory, yes, they miss that second part for the time being. I think Amtrak Police is a very good example because it's a federal law enforcement agency and they move people in and around the state, in and around the country, let alone the state of California. They're a post agency. I think there's 2 or 3 Amtrak requests. So as they transfer people into the state, should we issue them the waiver, which we do, if they meet the training requirements, they wouldn't be able to work if they couldn't get to that recall course. So what I'm getting at is, yes, they meet the basic minimum training requirements. The only thing that's being waived is the additional requirement of that 3-week course for most of them. It also, for peace officers that have been out of the profession for 3 years and are coming back into the profession, they are also required to go through that 3-week course. So if they've been a police officer in the city of Stockton and now they're going to go work at San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, if they've been out for 3 years, they have to go through that recall course. If the recall course isn't available, they can't work. So this gives them that ability to continue to be sworn in if that department wants to make that decision. So it's somewhat pro forma for us. If they meet all the requirements, then we check the box and issue the waiver.
Commissioner Tubbs, anything else on that? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments as to this issue? Okay, moving on to number 8. That's report on the use of force guidelines update. At this time, I will call upon law enforcement consultant Brad Newmeyer, Management, Counseling, and Projects Bureau, to provide us a report on the use of force guidelines update. Thank you.
Good morning, all. Thank you for having me here to talk about the progress on our current use of force guidelines. Pursuant to Senate Bill 230, on January 1st of 21, all agencies have to have a legally compliant policy to match the requirements in SB 230. It was 2 parts. The first part was a course, which has already been completed. The second part was the guidelines required to build a legally compliant policy by all agencies effective 1/1 of 21. We held our first meeting in June 24th and 25th in Alameda County. We had a blended meeting, both half online and half in person. We got a substantial amount of work done and believed that we could finish the work on July 22nd in a single day at our second meeting. That turned out to be a bit ambitious because of the changes that are going on and further review. We couldn't get it done that date and had to push the third and final meeting off to September 3rd of 2020. which we did complete the work on the project. Unfortunately, we had heard that through our ledge analyst and through the legislature that AB 1196 was in the works, which would have prohibited an agency to approve the crowd control technique or chokeholds. So we actually purposely held it till the end of September, awaiting the potential change in legislation and if the bill is going to be chaptered or not. It was actually chaptered on September 30th, and that made us modify the document again at the end. And we actually finished it with the contract writers this Monday, so October 20th. So it's in hand, it's in the building. We're going through the final edits on the product to make it compliant for viewing by disabled parties and going through our internal processes for completion of the product to be distributed to the field. We anticipate it to be out on or about the 1st of November, which would give the agencies about 2 months to review it and push their policies out. And that's the completion of my study.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Brad, if I know we've pushed this out in written form to the commission at one point, but can you include just some of the members of the SME group, just so we see that it's a wide variety of the community? Thank you, Brad.
My apologies, sir. Yes, sir. So we had a 15-member subject matter expert group that we convened. I won't provide the names, but I'll tell you who they represented and what their current jobs were. So
Brad, I'm going to ask you to slow down for the reverb.
Sorry. So we had a current lieutenant from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. We had a public member who works as an attorney in the field. We had a Lexipol representative. We had a retired Placer County lieutenant who's a current academy trainer. We had a current university law enforcement trainer who's also a retired FBI agent. We had a BART assistant chief, an Alameda County commander, a Cal Chiefs representative from a Northern California Police Department. He was a police chief. A Cal Sheriff's representative from the Orange County Sheriff's Department as a captain. And a PORAC representative from the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department or Sheriff's Office. He was a deputy. California Department of Justice provided a civil rights section attorney. We had a RIPA board member who was a retired lieutenant from a Northern California agency. We had an ACLU lawyer and RIPA board member. We had a member of the League of United Latin American Citizens, and we had an ACLU attorney present in the room.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, yes.
I can't see the whole screen.
Yeah.
That would be Commissioner.
Donlin,
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
I don't know if this is for Brad or for Manny, and on this topic, thank you very much for the work you're doing in the context of COVID and also in certainly a changing dynamic when it comes to use of force. And given we've even made decisions here at Post as you've been trying to roll out this particular training and policy and instruction. Where are we with teaching the defensive tactics instructors? So we're focused on the police officers and ensuring that they're up to date with current legislation and having a path for them. Are we mandating ongoing training for those that teach this, the defensive tactics instructors themselves, like the police officers they're teaching, sort of train the trainer? I don't know if that's for Brad or for Manny.
Manny?
Thank you. So I presume that we would have to make some changes and some requirements for them. Because I don't think there are any at this point. The one thing that we have been addressing, we addressed it with the training manager symposium, we addressed it here internally over the course of the last 3 weeks, that all of those types of courses, all the use of force courses should have some component of the new requirements in 835A, whether it's an arrest and control course or a defensive tactics course. But at this point, I don't believe there is any kind of requirement for them to include that. We can definitely do our part and push that through, Commissioner Donlin. We can try to make a requirement. If you'd like, we could try to push it through for the next CPT cycle. But at this point, it is a voluntary thing for them.
So potentially the situation we have would be the same instructor, if he taught me more than 20 years ago use of force, may have not gone through a class updating, teaching use of force in the 20 years.
That is correct. And one of the things we're trying to address, and I think we've talked about it at the commission meeting, there's just some complexities with how we would deliver the requirement. So as you know, there's a regulation 1070, that requires certification for certain types of training. There is one of the issues with it is we see that there is no update requirement. So whatever that 1070 requirement was, if you went through the course 20 years ago, you're not required to go through an update. The side part of that is there is no 1070 requirement for use of force training. We think that that should be changed. We think that there should be some kind of a requirement for individuals that are going to teach use of force or going to address 835A, that they have some kind of certification. There's some complexities with getting that out with academy instructors and EVOC instructors, and where does 835A touch? And it touches a lot of different areas. But as it stands now, no, there is no requirement. Anybody can teach use of force.
Yes, Commissioner Tubbs.
Thank you, and thank you all for your hard work on this very important topic. Just a couple questions. My first question being, in terms of subject matter experts, and I was listening, doing my best to listen. Was there anyone on that team that's like an expert in implicit bias or in mental health in terms of the folks coming up with these guidelines?
No, there wasn't.
Well, there was with use of force.
Experts, well, in use of force there was, as far as explicit bias, there was not. But there were use of force experts in our group.
So there were two members from the RIPA board.
Correct.
One member from the ACLU, who I believe was two members. One of them was I don't want to say the author of AB 392 that changed the 835A, but he was a participant as well.
Correct.
Is a SME.
There's also a member from the Civil Rights Enforcement section.
Got it. And then in terms of, and maybe this is before I was appointed, but how was the group selected?
Yeah, we selected the group from.
We being you, Manny, or?
Yeah, we at post staff.
Okay. And what process was used to select, or what criterion did you guys use to select this group?
Essentially, people that we felt were experts in the field, I guess is the best way to put it. We didn't advertise for people to submit their names. People that we felt were relevant in the field, just like, we monitor the RIPA board meetings and participate in those meetings. And we asked them to give us a name of an individual. I don't think we selected anybody from the RIPA board. If my understanding is correct, we simply asked for a representation from the RIPA board. We asked for representation from LULAC, and we asked for representation from the ACLU. And I believe we also asked for representation from the legislative Hispanic caucus and the Black caucus, and they did not supply anybody.
Got it. And last two questions. Would it be possible, because I know we got like broad career paths, but would it be possible to send me a list of names of the people who are on this, who are the subject matter experts and part of this working group?
Yes, and they will be listed on the actual publication of the use of force guidelines by name as participants.
Okay, got it. And I think the ship has sailed, but the last point in terms of looking at, in terms of what the basic training should include in terms of implicit bias, cultural competency, mental health, bias and stigma, it just seems like a missed opportunity not to have like experts, like people who have PhDs, who study this, who know this, as part of developing our use of force. From, and I haven't seen the list, but from kind of the broad titles that were given, it seems like the same folks who have been doing important work on this issue, but the work that's been done, and it seems like the public's expecting more. So I would hope in the future when we have the opportunity to revise or to do things differently, that we bring in new voices that are like literal subject matter experts in mental health, subject matter experts in cultural competency, so subject matter experts in implicit bias, because I think that will make our good work even better. But I appreciate all the hard work that did go into this.
I believe, respectfully, I believe we did that. What we were addressing was Senate Bill 230, which addressed 14 points. And I think we did have individuals that were responsible for or experts in those 14 points. I'm not sure, I mean, it was not a mental health course, or they're not mental health guidelines. It's specific to SB 230.
No, I understand that. Maybe I don't want to belabor the point, but it sounds like that part of it was to make sure officers are prepared and trained and de-escalation, things of that sort. And I think from the data, it shows that a lot of use of force incidents happen when folks are actually undergoing some sort of mental health disorder or crisis. So it just seems wise, given that 1 to 14 points is mental health, as well as cultural competency, as well as implicit bias, that there's people who are actually experts on those things to help inform the conversation, as was the intent of the Senate bill.
So I think in reference to implicit bias, I believe there were 2 members from the RIPA board on that SME list, including the civil rights section from Department of Justice.
No, and I get that. I think part of it is just hard knowing who's on the list because I don't have those names, but I also am not convinced that being on a board, on a committee, makes someone the expert. There's a lot of committees I'm on, like the post committee, for example, which doesn't make me an expert on every single thing that post does. So the point I'm just making, Manny, is that moving forward, in addition to having folks who represent groups and boards, is making sure we have folks who are actual subject matter experts on the items discussed. I think will just lead to a better outcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Tubbs. Anything else?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, and who is that?
This is Lamont Ewell.
Please go ahead.
No, well, first, I certainly appreciate what the mayor has stated, because even if it's just to help inform or shape the discussion before decisions are made, I think that would make for a better end product. But I wanted to ask, of the 14 recommendations, was there a unanimous decision that everyone supported these?
Commissioner Ewell, one moment. Brad?
Well, there's 14 points in the actual course that are required. There was 21 legislative requirements or standards that were identified in the policy section of SB 230. And our job was to go through each of those 21 legislative requirements and provide guidance on how an agency could build a policy based on those 21 standards articulated by the legislature. So this legislative intent was to write a policy specific to the 21 points outlined in SB 230. And we looked at all those points and we provided guidance on each and every one of those 21 standards across the board, from all angles, from ACLU side to law enforcement side and everything in the middle, to come up with the best recommendations possible for an agency to build a legally compliant policy, because this is a policy piece. We did talk about implicit bias. We did talk about the training that occurs at post in procedural justice training and in the academy and throughout our footprint. But our focus mainly on this was the policy piece, so agencies could follow the legislative intent and write a legislatively compliant policy going forward. And then the application of that policy by the people in the field is up to the agency to implement the policy that meets their criteria, to train and distribute that policy to their personnel, and then confirm that they're following the directives of that agency, and either retrain to the policy or take action to ensure that they're following the policy as the department dictates to their personnel. And that was our focus.
Commissioner Ewell, would you like to further comment on that or ask any more questions?
No, I'm just curious about, even as they discussed each of these points, I mean, did they all agree that these were vital, or was there differences of opinion that did not get discussed?
I believe, and please, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, you were told those were going to be. There wasn't any discussion, there wasn't any wiggle room in that. That was part of what the legislature decided. Is that correct?
Correct. Anytime the legislature says shall or must, we have to do as the legislature instructs because it's the law. Our piece was the guidelines in support of those requirements. And there was a lot of discussions. Like we said, the first meeting went for 2 days. The second meeting, we thought we could finish in a day. And because of the robust discussions, differing opinions, and everybody getting their piece, on almost every single point, there was, well, I won't say unanimous agreement, but there was a settlement to the point that that guideline that we're giving forward will help them build a compliant policy. Because we weren't in the process of dictating to agencies specifically what to do, just in how to build a compliant policy, then they have to direct their people going forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both.
Commissioner Yule, and anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, Manny, not to belabor the point, but you might want to discuss how you become an expert in the field. It's not that you just declare yourself one.
I'll turn that over to Manny.
No, that is correct. We obviously kind of wire brush them to make sure that their resumes and their background has the requisite experience to participate in those discussions. I'd also like to add, I should have said it before, but obviously you can't get everybody in the room, and sometimes people get left out. But we are always open to adding SMEs that are made at the request of certain individuals or entities. I think even from the commission, if I may, I can point to you, Madam Chair. You've asked me to put certain people or as subject matter experts. I believe Commissioner Moore asked me to add somebody to the campus law enforcement curriculum from 2 weeks ago, and we're always available to entertain those requests. I think we've complied with every one of those requests, but we do look through the subject matter experts to make sure they're the right people. We've also made a very concerted effort to not keep using the same people over and over and over again for the same thing. One of the knocks, which I think is against Post, which I think is just not accurate, is that Post does everything in a silo with just law enforcement people. I think this demonstrates that it's not just law enforcement people, it's people from a wide swath of the community, which is what we want and what we get as a better product. I mean, we addressed this in 2017-18 when we were starting to update our training courses for procedural justice and implicit bias. All of our academy workbooks were modified in 2017-18, or I think it was 2017-18. It might have been 2018-19. I may be misspeaking here. But we had members from LULAC, we had members from the NAACP, we had members from the ACLU, we had members from the Museum of Tolerance that all participated in rewriting our workbooks. But sure enough, there's always going to be one group that may be missed. But we do try to get a wide swath of the community to participate in our curriculum development and all of our guidelines. And I think Mr. DeGear is a perfect example of that with the hate crimes model policy that was done 18 months ago. I believe it was entirely the community with maybe 1 or 2 law enforcement members and 18 advocacy members or 15 advocacy members from different groups from across the state that created those hate crimes guidelines. So I don't mean to be defensive about it, but I do think that we do try to do a good job and not just do it in a silo.
Let me just add on my personal experience that I was probably approached about 20 years ago to be a subject matter expert. It was after I had a certain amount of success in sexual assault crimes in Santa Barbara. And since I've been a commissioner, so I probably participated in, I don't know, maybe a dozen SME groups over the years. They've always been very diverse, but I think it's critical that we keep making sure that we hear from various points of view. So I want to encourage the new commissioners, if you know of people, you've encountered people you think really could add to the discussion, please give their names to Manny and they'll be included, because that's what we want out of those subject matter experts. We want people with varying thoughts, varying feelings, varying positions, varying perspectives, so that we can build the best kind of program. Yes, Commissioner Tubbs?
And I appreciate that, Madam Chair. And I think what would be helpful for me if there's a list of subject matter experts on implicit and explicit bias and cultural competency that we're using, and also on mental health and policing, including bias and stigma, then I would know who's missing and who's not. So if that could be provided, I would really appreciate that.
Okay, with the initial procedural justice and implicit bias training course that we prepared and what's now being used in the academy, that was done as a collaborative effort between Post and the California Department of Justice, Civil Rights Section of the Department of Justice under the previous Attorney General. We also included the Stockton Police Department, the Oakland Police Department, and Spark from Stanford University. We modeled our work initially under the Chicago Police Department model.
Commissioner Tubbs was asking for that information. Is there something beyond what you said that can be provided to him?
Sure, I could submit something.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tubbs, anything else on that issue? Commissioner Tubbs, you're muted. Still muted. There you go.
No, I was muted because I said no.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on these issues we just presented? Okay, thank you, Brad. Okay, the next is
Madam
on-
Chair,
Yes,
can I add a few things about the force option simulator course that we have?
please, please.
This is kind of piggybacking on what Brad was talking about. This is just an update on the new force option course for the new virtual reality simulators that will be distributed throughout the state of California. As you know, we have 80 new machines that are going to go out throughout California. Tenseme's earlier this year put together the train the trainer course. The first course was delivered 2 weeks ago. It covers the 14 points that were outlined in recent legislation. These 3 to 4 groups will spread out throughout the state of California and present the 24-hour course to the trainers. It's primarily scenario-based decision-making with a focus on de-escalation. And again, it covers all 14 areas that's mandated by current regulation. The course will be delivered to the field will be 8 hours. It will be a Plan 1 and fully reimbursable, which includes backfill overtime. So I just want to kind of give you a heads up on where we are with that particular course. I anticipate the machines to be delivered probably December, and the course will be given every month, if not twice a month from here on out until we have everybody trained, at least the trainers, I should say. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Madam Chair, if I may contradict myself earlier with Commissioner Donelan's question. For this course, correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, but in order to teach this course, you must be certified by Post. You must go through the train the trainer course to actually teach this part of it.
That is correct. You must attend this course and be a 1070 certification to actually go out and teach to the rest of the state of California.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, anything else on those issues? Seeing no one, there we go. No, okay. We're now going to go on to, let's see, that would be number 9. And for the next 4, I will call upon Bureau Chief Drew Wyant, Management Counseling and Projects Bureau, to provide us a report. His first report will be on de-escalation publication update. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for allowing me to speak today. I'm going to give you a little update on our de-escalation publication. Roughly a year ago, in regards to the 2 Senate bills, AB 392 and SB 230, Post convened a summit in October of last year with over 100 subject matter experts from across the country to discuss de-escalation. These experts included law enforcement officers, dispatchers, mental health clinicians, attorneys, prosecutors, law enforcement auditors, monitors, college professors, nurses, and doctors. And I can assure you they were extremely vetted. Out of that summit came this, our publication, the De-Escalation Strategies and Techniques for California Law Enforcement, which summarizes the findings and recommendations of the experts and stresses the importance of cultivating positive community engagement and agency culture, creating achievable strategies and clearly defined policies, leveraging training and improving personal wellness. Recommendations identified by the subject matter experts were outlined in the report are intended to assist law enforcement personnel in attaining safety and security while mitigating the potential for violent confrontations. Post-released, this document, the De-Escalation Strategies and Techniques for California Law Enforcement, on August 26th of this year. The publication was designed to provide, agencies with the data to assist in development of training and policy, as well as help meet legislative and statutory requirements. This publication covers comprehensive requirements and changes outlined in Senate Bills SB 230 and AB 392, which become effective, SB 230 becomes effective January 1, 2021. AB 392 came effective January 1 of this past year. And the content of these bills are detailed in this publication. An update kind of using our new strategic communication strategies. Once we did release this particular document, we were able to email this particular document to the field using two different email systems announcing it. We basically sent this particular document to 104,228 users. We also sent it out to Facebook, which we reached 148 users. We also marketed it through LinkedIn with 494 impressions, and also through Twitter with 1,052 impressions. Also, once we did receive this, or once we actually published the document and sent it out to the field, I received a phone call. The first phone call I received was actually from the National FBI Academy. It was early the following morning. Basically what they said was that they were going to use it, asked if they could use it as a resource in their training curriculum. Obviously we said absolutely. I also received calls from Michigan Post, Arizona Post, basically both agency or both of those commissions wanted to use that as a training resource and send it out to their participating agencies as well. Along with a few other agencies throughout the nation. We also had Police One contacted us, where they published an article on September 18th, where they posted or actually wrote an article about the De-Escalation Summit, and actually posted the document where there was a link to the Post website, taking the reader to the De-Escalation publication. And that is the conclusion of my report. Thank you.
Congratulations on getting that report out and on all those unsolicited letters of support. I'm not surprised, but it's always great to hear you did great work. Any other comments or questions from other commissioners? Okay, moving on to number 10. That would be report on guidelines for student safety and certified courses update.
Thank you. This will be a relatively quick report. Basically, we're just pleased to notify the commission that the post guidelines for student safety and certified courses in 2020 have been approved by the Office of Administrative Law, filed with the Secretary of State, published on the Post website, and that the field has been notified of their availability effective as of October 1, 2020. Thank you.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, moving on to the next area, that's crowd management, please.
Okay, in regards to crowd management, on August 5th, our executive director, Manny Alvarez, summoned several of our bureau chiefs, and he wanted to meet to discuss, the potential legislative changes in regards to crowd control and related issues in regards to, non-lethal tools, techniques, academy training, and our guidelines in regards to crowd management. We basically looked into a lot of the, within a lot of our bureaus for any potential changes needed as a result for contemporary issues and/or potential legislative changes that are coming up. We started out first, and all know this is actually a very large project. However, what we're starting out with right now is we're going to work on the guidelines first, and that's basically where we're starting. Our current guidelines have not been updated since 2012. So we convened a group of SMEs and conducted a highly productive meeting on October 1 and October 2, October 2nd. The discussion in the room was extremely productive. Not only, and we had in that discussion with more than 100 new ideas of focus with new technologies and strategies. We're working very hard with an aggressive timeline for this project and have our next meeting scheduled for November 17th and 18th. We hope to get most of, if not all, the guidelines discussed and reviewed as a group so that we can finalize a document hopefully by the first of the year. And
Any questions or comments on that?
Madam Chair, this is Lili.
Lili, please go on.
Yeah, Manny, you and your folks, thank you very much for bringing this to the forefront. I think it has come at a great time with all of the increase in First Amendment demonstrations across the nation, as well as the increase in the or escalation of violence against officers during these events. I think this is extremely appropriate. So thank you for doing this. I just heard that you're going to have a follow-up meeting in November. If possible, Manny, if I could just talk to you offline about this to maybe sit in on this discussion, that would be most appreciated. Since I have quite a bit of exposure here in Sacramento in all the events that have occurred here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else comments, questions about crowd control?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Moore.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I was very interested in a couple of things. And when we talked about earlier, I thought the de-escalation and crowd management should have probably been mixed in or brought together because the experiences I have and here down in San Jose. But and I noticed when we talk about the subject matter experts, we fail to leave off general community members. And I think that general people from the community might have add some nice different flavor or an outlook on what happened. And and when you said the guidelines had not been updated since 2012, it almost feels sometimes just from a community from where I'm coming from is like I look back in history and I saw what happened at the Pettus Bridge. The crowd control tactics were still the same to push all the people together. And so I would really hope that the community would be more involved to see what this new technology is. And I would like to as well volunteer my availability to, if at all possible, to be part of the conversation in on November 17 and 18. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Anyone else? Okay, Drew, if I can ask you to stay there and also invite law enforcement consultant Jackie Nelson, both of the Management Counseling and Projects Bureau, and Bureau Chief Roseanne Rochelle, Learning Technology Resource Bureau, to provide us a report on distance learning. Please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So in regards to our advanced learning platform, pursuant to the California State Budget Act 2020, Post was given $10 million to reappropriate general funds. One, to create a distance learning program. Two, to increase the functionality of Post's learning portal. And three, upgrade previously produced and developed distance learning courses and videos. The first thing we did is we took a look at the first part of the program. We actually dispersed $5 million to create a distance learning program, and I'm going to turn that over to law enforcement consultant Jackie Nelson. She's actually the program manager on this, and I'll have her discuss that.
Thank you. Jackie? As long as the green button is pressed, you're good. Want to switch seats so you can
she can see. Oh, you're on camera.
Wow, impressive.
Thank you for that.
Please go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the commission. I'm Jackie Nelson, and I am the law enforcement consultant responsible for the distance learning grant, and I'm here to provide you an update on the program as it is thus far. As an overview, the grant was established to meet both the short-term needs the short-term needs of the law enforcement profession due to the pandemic, as well as long-term impacts of reduced state and local budgets. The intent is to provide opportunities for readily accessible, high-quality training that is delivered more effectively and efficiently for all law enforcement personnel statewide. By delivering this training remotely, we are hoping it can reach all agencies from the smallest to the largest across the state. On July 6th of 2020, the RFP for the grant went live and Post received 30 applications for grant funding. Of those, 21 were approved for awards covering the 5 program topic areas. The total money allocated in awards is $4,282,209. The 21 awards are evenly distributed amongst the 5 topic areas and include 5 grants for organizational wellness, 4 grants for use of force and de-escalation, 4 grants of implicit bias and racial profiling, 4 grants for community policing, and 4 grants for cultural diversity. And just for point of reference, those awardees, recipients are on the screen for your review. As of October 15th, 2020, just last week, the grant performance period began, and Post anticipates exceptional training to come from these programs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the program.
Are there any questions? I guess not. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The second part of the program, we took $3 million to upgrade the learning management system. Basically, we call it the learning management modernization. We're looking to ensure stability and augment the current learning portal. Currently, Post is in the scope of work, or the scope of work was completed, and we're in the PAL stage 2 of the state's product approval lifecycle process. DGS and CDT have been engaged in for contracting purposes. We're working on developing Instructor online SMEs to list, or developing a list of for online a SME list for online instructors to develop framework with Alancom for instructor-led courses, Zoom sessions with online activities type of thing. The first allocation is going to be designed for operational service, or it's going to be a $1.6 million contract, and we're going to be, it's going to be designed to assist with operational services to the existing learning portal, distance learning expansion to include developing components to build the online learning, hosting courses, tools and videos, update coding to support the browser, addressing technical and usability issues, and it'll also allow for other enhancements.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commission. My name is Roseanne Ritchell, and I'm the Bureau Chief with the Learning Technology Resources Bureau. My bureau is working in collaboration with Drew's bureau on this project, and we have the $3 million that Drew has just spoken about, in addition to $2 million, which is going to be broken down into distance learning course upgrades that we currently have. Like Drew spoke of, the first $3 million is going to be to enhance our learning portal so that we can make augmentations to that to allow for outside presenters, smaller agencies who want to provide distance learning and they don't have a learning management system within their organizations. So currently, part of that 1.6 million, which is a piece of the 3 million, the first allocation, is going to be utilized for, again, hosting courses, coding, updating, usability factors, but also building out components so that these presenters can build their own online courses. So that is in play right now. That's what we're currently working on. The additional $2 million that we have supplied for, or we've allocated for distance learning course upgrades, it's broken down into we have 4 courses, instructor courses that we need to update due to browser issues. Adobe Flash will be no longer usable by the end of this year, and we want to be able to preserve those courses, and we're going to utilize some of that money for those course upgrades. We also have some other courses that we want to upgrade and proctor courses for the Basic Training Bureau. So the $2 million is going to be utilized to enhance those courses or add to new courses.
Thank you. I think it's fabulous that the portal will now be available in some way to some of those smaller agencies. Can you tell me, how are you going to ensure that the smaller agencies now know we will have that capacity when in fact we do?
So presently, we are really right in the infancy of the development of this project. I was in a meeting yesterday about how we're going to develop these courses, and then we're going to reach out to these agencies to ask for their input on what they would like seen. So we are really at the very onset of figuring out who might use the technology and how they would use it. So we're building that model plan right now.
But you're including them in the discussion of what they need and how they need it, and you're going to try to provide the services based upon the need.
Absolutely. We want to provide that platform so that they can also deliver this online courses.
Excellent. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, Mr. Alvarez.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to hit on one of the points. The $10 million in the Budget Act for distance learning was specifically outlined. It wasn't a decision on our part in terms of how the money was spent. $5 million was allocated in the Budget Act for grants, $3 million for improving the platform, and then $2 million for outlining or creating curriculum. So that wasn't a decision that we necessarily made. It was in the Budget Act.
Thank you. Any other comments on any of these issues before Drew leaves the table? And Drew, is there anything else?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. It's now 11:02. We've been at this for an hour and a half. Let's take an 8-minute break and get back here at 11:10. Thank you. We will start in about a minute. Okay. Let's see. Just want to see a few more of those beautiful commissioner faces. Commissioner Bui, you there? Okay, let's start up.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay, let's see. Now we're up to number 13. At this time, I will call upon Bureau Chief Phil Caporali, Strategic Communications and Research Bureau, to provide a report on strategic communications strategy, and then another topic after that. Welcome, Phil.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My first report is on a marketing or branding strategy for Post. By way of background, at the February 2020 Commission meeting, Commissioner Ramirez requested that Post research a marketing or branding strategy for Post. The presentation was tabled at the June Commission meeting due to COVID-19. I'd like to make 2 points that are the result of the Post strategic plan and recommendations made from the Mission Consulting Organizational Analysis Report, January 23rd, 2018. The first point is to implement strategic communications and marketing efforts to promote wider understanding of Post roles and services, improve service, promote compliance, and build the Post brand. The second point is to personalize the brand of Post, which is often identified solely as a compliance and regulatory agency without much insight into all that Post does and the people who make up the organization. So in order to further those goals, Post has created a strategic communications unit. The purpose of the unit is so that all outward communications, for example, bulletins, publications, monthly reports, are funneled through this unit to ensure consistent style, branding, and easily recognizable content from Post. As a result of Senate Bill 978, Post has created 2 web pages for public viewing. One contains expanded course outlines, and the other contains training videos. As of last week, there were 4,379 expanded course outlines available. There was an inquiry yesterday from the advisory committee as to how many hits were on that web page. I did not have the information yesterday, but I do today. There are 8,186 hits on the homepage, and out of those hits, there were 4,870 downloads of course content. Additionally, there are 96 videos available for the public to download and or view. Some of the suggestions we have for consideration by the commission to increase our marketing or branding are to create podcasts, which would highlight different services and publications offered by Post to participating agencies, and also highlight changes, achievements, and current events impacting law enforcement. Secondly, to use the Did You Know video series to further explain Post's roles and responsibilities. Third is to conduct frequent social media posts highlighting Post's achievements. For example, many of the things you heard about this morning, videos, publications, and workshops. And lastly, to create a Post Instagram account. And Madam Chair, this concludes my formal presentation. I'm available for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Commission, yes. Mr. Alvarez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may add a couple of points to what Phil said. So first of all, we've had some fits and starts just trying to build the strategic communications unit inside of Post just based on our size and people coming and going. So I thank you, Phil. I know that's been a challenge to get that thing up and running the way you would like. So that's one component. The other thing is we did have some internal discussions based on the requests from the last commission meeting or the last two commission meetings about this. And we had some things that were thrown out at us that we mentioned yesterday at the advisory committee. So we talked about doing town halls, either before a commission meeting or if a commission member or a commissioner wants to hold a town hall, that we could fund that portion of it. We would ask that one staff member there be there to answer technical questions that may come up, but to let the commissioner run those town halls. We've also talked about having a town hall prior to a commission meeting with various commission members, which obviously we would have to potentially adhere to the Bagley-Keene requirements. That unfortunately may take the same role as kind of a public comment period, but those are two ideas that came out. One is we've talked about doing podcasts with Post staff, Post law enforcement, or Post agency personnel, and also to do podcasts with commissioners if they so desired. We also, we met with Commissioner Norm Bohm. He was the Executive Director Norm Bohm. He was the Executive Director at Post for 18 years, 1980s and 90s. He threw out a recommendation of having a community committee similar to the advisory or the finance committee as another potential opportunity for community engagement. So I just throw that out to you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you,
Any
Phil.
questions or comments? Yes, and that would be Commissioner Ramirez. Commissioner Ramirez, you're on mute.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much for your work and what you did and looking into that. I think it's amazing, going to send us in the right direction. Now the challenge is for all of us as commissioners to get the message out to the community, especially like Commissioner Moore. And I think it just makes us so much more transparent, and I think it'll help us in the long run. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez. Commissioner Moore, did you have your hand up?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I just want to say I like the did you know videos. I really like those, and I would just like to know what would be the plan to get them, those that are geared toward the community specifically. How do we get them to the community? How do we get the community involved? Are we going to include the Department of Education? Would it be sent out to school districts? Or is there a type of game plan of how we would get the information out to try to bridge that gap?
Annie?
Yes, 1 minute, if I may, ma'am. 1 second.
On a personal level, I can tell you that I've sent it to the NAACP in Santa Barbara County. I'm a member there, and they sent it out to the membership. And I've also sent it to schools in Santa Barbara County and to the Cottage Hospital staff. So I think they're terrific too. I join you in appreciating them, and I think it would be great for the community to see more of them. Mr. Alvarez.
Madam Chair, thank you. Sorry for having to get some clarification. So we're in the final stages of putting out a survey that'll go out through PASS to anybody who has an account on the Post website, whether it's a peace officer, a dispatcher, or a public member, community member, with the survey on what they would like to see in terms of our did you knows, as well as our regular 2-hour training curriculum or our self-paced courses. That should go out shortly. We had a meeting on it, I think, on Monday. It's not out yet, but it'll go out to well over 6,000 individuals that have accounts on the Post website.
And Commissioner Moore, if I may, also, this dovetails nicely into the next topic, and perhaps that will give you some more information to disseminate.
Any further discussion on this topic?
If I may, one more time, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, just with the did you know specific to the question that Commissioner Moore posed, a lot of times what we try to do is we try to create and time those did you knows, they're short 3, 4, 5-minute max videos out when training is being rolled out so that we can get maximum exposure. So for instance, we rolled out hate crimes training in the spring. At the same time, we rolled out a hate crimes did you know. We tried to time the GVRO training course with the release of a gun violence restraining order training at the same time with a did you know on gun violence restraining order training. Unfortunately, the timing on those two didn't work, but we try to time them at the same time that the training's being deployed as well.
Thank you, Director. And one of the fentanyl one, even though it was geared toward police, I never understood just how deadly that was until I watched the video. So even if we had something like that geared toward parents and kids, would be excellent to make sure the community is aware.
Commissioner Moore, I couldn't agree with you more. They are excellent, and I do think that they're presented in such a manner that many people in our community can profit from seeing them. Anything else? Okay, now we're going to dovetail into your second topic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second topic is related to communication mechanisms for the field to comment or send inquiries to Post staff. By way of background, at the February 2020 Commission meeting, Commissioner Bowie requested that Post develop a mechanism so that officers can comment and or send questions to Post. This presentation was also tabled at the June Commission meeting due to COVID-19. So currently we have a litany of methods to communicate externally with our stakeholders, with the general public, with the Commission, et cetera. And I'd like, if I may, to briefly summarize those current methods.
Please.
We currently use the electronic data interchange, better known as EDI, which is the warehouse for police training records, education, certificates earned, and employment histories for people within our database. We also have a help desk that's tied to that takes care of technical support for people that need assistance to either get their records updated or changed or available. Also deals with reimbursements, the Academy Instructor Certification Program, Supervisory Leadership Institute, which you're going to hear about in a little while, and Post certificates. So it's pretty broad-based in terms of assistance to the field. Obviously, you're all aware of our regional consultants. There are 10 regions in California with a senior law enforcement consultant assigned to each area. We also have available emails and telephone via our Contact Us webpage. This is sorted by topic, contact person, and responsible bureau. We additionally have created a questions, comments, and feedback webpage. We have a presence on many social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And as Director Alvarez mentioned, we send out frequent notices via pass accounts, which anyone can create through our website. And the user can select areas of interest that he or she wants information on, including things that are geographically separated for in-service personnel, for example, detectives, reserve peace officers, and training managers. There's a supervisory and management blast. There are also segments for basic course and instructors. And finally, another segment of our community public safety dispatchers. So the user decides which of those channels they want to receive, and anytime there's an update to any of the highlighted areas, they are provided that information. We also have a general public pass account, which is on our home webpage, and that can be either a public announcement or only viewable by a past interest area. Suggestions that we have to further this effort, Director Alvarez mentioned a couple of them already, but I'd like to expand on them if I may. We asked or would ask you to consider a Ask a Commissioner webpage, which would have the contact information, in other words, email and phone numbers for the commission members. Currently, right now, you can see their biographies and pictures, but there's really no way to directly contact any of you. As for the Ask Post website feedback, we would suggest designing some kind of a survey template rather than an open-ended website, so that people from the public or from our stakeholders can give us feedback on training, on notices, or any items that are of interest. And these are the ones that I think would help Post do more outreach via the commission, outreach to key organizations outside the law enforcement community, as Commissioner Moore mentioned, increasing our frequency of custom messages to targeted audiences, and then soliciting feedback via these social channels. And lastly, a call-in to Post, which could be anonymous with a set schedule via a toll-free number. Much like Director Alvarez alluded to earlier, people can call in with questions and voice their concerns. Madam Chair, this concludes my formal presentation.
Thank you. I think all those ideas are terrific. And I think it would be great to have the community have more access to both the commissioners as well as Post employees and staff. So thank you. Any comments or questions? Commissioner Boyd?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Phil, thank you for your comprehensive report. I really appreciate all the work that you and the other staff members have put into this. And I think that it's important that we not only do outreach to our community members to find out the needs of the folks that we serve, but I think also to our officers and our dispatchers and all the other folks that receive training or services from Post. So thank you for doing all that work.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Any other comments?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
May I just want to thank Commissioners Bowie and Ramirez for prompting us regarding this matter. Quite frankly, it's been on our to-do list, but when you mentioned it at the February Commission, it certainly helped us kickstart this endeavor. One of the things that we've realized that there's a corollary advantage to your ideas is Commissioner Brazil referenced this a couple of days ago. He made a statement to the effect of, if you don't tell your story, somebody else may do so for you and may make parts of it up. This is a tremendous opportunity for Post to show the entirety of the state of California, as well as the profession, that not only the good work that Post does, but the law enforcement does as well, but to do what I would call some myth busting. At Post, we get a lot of inquiries from either the public or the media or even academia clearly that shows they don't have an understanding of what it takes to become a law enforcement officer. And we take ownership of that because a lot of this we've made difficult for the public to find out. So with these endeavors that you guys have proposed for us, I think it's a tremendous opportunity, not only for us to make these services available with better frequency to the law enforcement community, but to the greater community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore, did you have a comment or question?
A good job. I just want to say that, and I don't know if I missed it or not, but as far as recruitment, anything aimed at recruitment to junior colleges, or high schools, or anything like that, was it being considered?
Are you talking about recruiting of peace officers, sir?
Yes, sir.
Probably the best program that we have in the state, in my humble opinion, is the career pipeline, where we partner with the campuses to encourage young people to enter into public service, which may or may not result in law enforcement, but there's a heavy emphasis on public service. So that could be in government, it could be in law enforcement, could be in the medical profession, could be in the fire profession. So the career pipeline is really, I think, an excellent conduit to educate and inform young people on the aspects and the benefits of becoming part of public service.
Thank you. Mr. Alvarez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on top of what Phil said, we also volunteered to assist with a bill that was going through on diversity, hiring diverse individuals into the law enforcement profession. That bill died. It's generally not our role. It's the agency's role to do the hiring and the recruiting. We really don't get too involved in hiring and recruiting or recruitment fairs and such for law enforcement. So primarily our role is with the career pipeline in a couple of communities, as well as with this bill, which I presume will resurface, and we're happy to participate in that regard.
And Commissioner Moore, we also advertise any job opportunities that we receive from our stakeholders. So we have a webpage dedicated to law enforcement opportunities that we provide free of charge.
Yeah, Madam Chair. Yes, I get the advertisements, and I'm aware of them, and I pass them on. But I just thought those videos were so nice. If there was something that maybe even at some of the college campuses and other communities that since our recruitment or I believe the people coming in applying or trying to be police officer numbers had dropped, if we would make some type of concerted effort to do more outreach to get more people to consider law enforcement as a option.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. And I agree with Commissioner Moore. It is a big concern of mine, recruitment, retention, and morale in law enforcement agencies. And anything the Post can do to help with that recruitment, retention, and especially the diversity recruitment, I think will make California law enforcement officers better. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'd just like to say, Commissioner Moore, anecdotally, that the study that we're currently doing on Assembly Bill 332, I think will, in the long term, enhance retention, at least through the academy portion of the process, to see best practices for retention of these recruits, find out where they're failing, why they're failing, and what we're doing to remediate them, and hopefully lower the numbers of failures within the academy setting.
Thank you. Anything else from any other commissioners on this? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on, let's see. At this time, I'll call upon Staff Service Manager Melanie Singley, Strategic Communications and Research Bureau, and Law Enforcement Consultant Marty Pignon, Training, Delivery, and Compliance Bureau, to provide us a report on peace officer background investigations. Thank you both for joining us.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. At the August Commission meeting, the Commission had asked staff to report on how we can improve the background investigation process. Part of that was spun from some legislation that was going through that would require post to develop a program that would include misconduct on profiles, as well as the issue with individuals employed by agencies, peace officers who maybe were under investigation at a department, leave the department, and then the investigation isn't completed and they go and get hired by another department that may or may not be aware of the former misconduct. So with that, the background investigation that's required to be conducted on all peace officers, it has to be thorough, and it has to involve that they're of good moral character. That's a state law. Post further expands on that by requiring that they are also absent from behavior that would be unsuitable to be a peace officer. The post requirements are such that they have to complete a personal history statement form. The post form is an extensive form. It's 28 pages long. There are questions related to their personal contacts, references, employment history, experience, education, legal, vehicle history, military history. It runs the gamut. It essentially is to investigate their entire life and work history. Some of the other questions were related to employment and issues with employment. Post requires that the background investigation includes a review of their current and past employers for at least the last 10 years. They sign numerous waivers and releases that provide provide background investigators with the opportunity to be able to do that. In addition, there are laws in place in which allows them to gather that information from law enforcement employers. Government Code 1031.1 is one that provides for employment information for those who are currently not employed as peace officers. There are a couple of laws that went into effect January of 2019 that specifically address law enforcement officers and misconduct. Those are, one had enhanced Penal Code Section 832.7, which expands the public access to information regarding sustained findings of sexual assault and also dishonesty from law enforcement officers, as well as discharging a firearm at an individual, and then also use of force that resulted in great bodily injury or death. Additionally, PC 832.12 was added to the penal code, which requires law enforcement employers to include investigations of misconduct in a personnel file or another file, and then obligates the officer to provide access to that information to a potential law enforcement employer. Further, the background investigation involves taking a look at their, what we call background investigation dimensions. So these are behaviors that they're good behaviors that you want in a candidate. And then it also includes indicators of areas that may indicate that they're not suitable for peace officer employment. Some of those indicators are, for example, biased judgment based on group characteristics or against specific groups, excuse me, lack of tact, impartiality in treating all members of society, when employed in a public trust position, not reporting criminal conduct by another officer, et cetera. So these are indicators that we currently have as being potential non-starters for law enforcement employment, and these are part of our background investigation mentions, which are also required to be assessed during the background investigation process. So the background investigation itself is a pretty extensive process. It's probably the most lengthy of all the selection processes, taking weeks to months to complete, and many hours dedicated by background investigators. However, there are all obviously ways that probably can be improved. Some of the areas or suggestions that we have would be to mandate background investigation training. Currently, background investigators generally are comprised of individual staff from departments. They can conduct background investigations, licensed private investigators, and then, or an attorney can conduct a background investigation. So those are the three main groups of people, if you will. Currently, there's no requirement of any kind of training for these individuals. We are suggesting possibly requiring background investigation training We have a requirement for psychologists that they have to review the psychological screening manual and take an online exam that indicates that they at least understand post regulations and what's contained in that manual prior to them conducting psychological evaluations. So we're suggesting having something very similar for background investigators. Additionally, post certifies a 32-hour minimum post-background investigation course, which includes information on laws, regulations, has scenarios that discusses ways to conduct interviews, what a background investigation report should look like, what the background investigation file should look like. So also recommending that also be a requirement that they complete. The training itself, so if we were to develop an online training course similar to the psychological screening manual course, it would be similar to in that they would have to be familiar with what was contained in the manual as far as the guidance is concerned and the regulations. And then it would be available 24/7 on the learning portal. It'd be available free of charge to the agencies. So it'd be something relatively easy that at least if someone is assigned as a background investigator, if they have to take that online course, we at least know that they're familiar with what's required by post, what's required in the background investigation. Some other suggestions we had were to potentially include like a suitability declaration, something of that sort that would be similar to what, again, we require of the psychological evaluation, is they have to deem the individual suitable for employment. It would be something to the effect of, the background investigation was thorough and they're found of good moral character and there are no indicators of unsuitability to be a peace officer. That sort of thing. And it can be signed by the background investigator and or the hiring authority. Lastly, another suggestion would be what I would call like a feedback loop. So currently for the psychological evaluation, we suggest that agencies, maybe when an individual is terminated from employment or leaves employment, that they provide what essentially is we call a selection validation survey. So it's something that would indicate why that individual left employment. So was it, if they were terminated, what was the reason behind that? And then that document would then be given to the psychologist so they can kind of follow up and say, well, is there something, if they were terminated during probation or FTO, is there something that was missed during the psychological evaluation that we should have known, or is there a way that we can improve the process? So by maybe incorporating something like that also in the background investigation, or at least as a mechanism for the agency to get some of that feedback, we may be able to improve the background process or the psychological evaluation process if that person was terminated during maybe the early months of the hiring while they were hired. So again, either as a probationary employee or in FTO. If they're terminated later, 2-3 years down the road, then again, it could be used as a feedback mechanism, maybe for improvement in organizational wellness or something to that effect. So those are some of the suggestions we have for improving the background process. And then if anyone has, that's pretty much the end of my report. So if anyone has any questions, and also Marty Picconi's here, and if you have questions regarding as far as what we look at when we go and do compliance check, he can certainly answer any of those questions as well.
Thank you, Melanie. Questions or comments from commissioners? Staff? Okay, thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going on to the report on status of dispatch supervisor participation in Sherwin Block Supervisory Leadership Institute. And we will call up consultant Jim Katapudis, Training Program Services Bureau, to provide this report.
Good morning, Chair Dudley. It's actually Jim Katapodis, but
Katapodis.
that's okay. People make a mistake, know my whole life. Also,
Apologize.
Virginia Tomek is here, also helped me on this.
Thank you.
So just a reminder, in 2018, Commissioner Brazil put a pilot program for dispatch supervisors to be in the SBSLI program. And at first we had like 6 people come in and 5 of them graduated from SLI. They had a great positive experience, so we moved on ahead. Right now, we probably would have had more people graduating if it wasn't for COVID-19, but right now we have 21 dispatch supervisors in the class and 26 are waiting to attend the class right now, which we should have them in the next couple of months. The transition with dispatch supervisor was seamless. The class accepted them. The part of non-sworn being with sworn was a great partnership. And the supervisors and the sergeants that were in the course thought it was a positive thing to have them in there. So with that, it's a short report. If you have any questions about it, we're going to move ahead and continue to put dispatch supervisors in SLI in the future, and we'll have an open enrollment probably around January to bring some more.
I'm curious, you made the statement that they thought it was good to have sworn and non-sworn. And can you give me an example about what someone said or why that was so unique and special?
Let's see, where's that? I think one of our dispatchers said it. Why I want to quote her. She said, "The trust between the dispatch supervisors and the sergeants within the class was instantaneous and never wavered. When we broached topics where we had a difference of opinion, we actively debated as a team, both with respect and dignity, listening to each other's views." So I think they got a good view from the non-sworn when it came to different, and they learned things from the non-sworn.
You'd think that I told you I was going to ask that question. You just grabbed that piece of paper, but I certainly didn't. And that certainly answers my question and makes us happy. Thank you. Anything else from anyone else on that?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to add, I've had feedback from a couple of our dispatch supervisors that are thrilled to be part of that program and so appreciative that they're being allowed to attend. It's been a big success for us.
Thank you, Commissioner McMahon. It's good to see you. Yes.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Donald, I just want to echo Commissioner McMahon's comments. I think this was a visionary idea, and it really does help break down that lack of knowledge between those in the field and those triaging what is turning into just be an exceptional number of calls for service in our individual communities. This is a great idea. Well done to you both.
Thank you, Commissioner Donlin. Commissioner Berg?
I just also want to say thank you so much. So many of our employees now in dispatch or in records or in communications anywhere are now civilianized positions. So having those supervisors have the same opportunities as our sworn personnel really is just absolutely wonderful. Kudos to everybody involved in this.
Terrific. Anything else? Okay, we'll just end with kudos.
Okay,
Thank you
sounds
so
good to me.
much.
I'll go with that. Thank you.
Okay, number 17, at this time, I'll call upon Bureau Chief Mike Radford, Training Program Services Bureau, to provide a report on alternative control holds in lieu of carotid restraint control hold. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, good afternoon. This is an informational report following a request from Commission to research possible options to the carotid restraint technique. So in preparation, subject matter experts were brought in from both Northern and Southern California. These experts were in the areas of arrest control, martial arts. We even brought in Henry Gracie from the Gracie family, known through the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world. We first discussed the intent of which the carotid application is actually used for. So obviously we came to the consensus that the use of the carotid restraint is to render a subject unconscious. So from there, we looked at what ways is that achieved. Of course, the vascular restraint in numerous positions was identified. Chemical assistance such as anesthesia or chloroform, or blunt force trauma was identified in ways such as personal body weapons, batons, gunshot wounds. So from there, we began to identify certain techniques, and we found a common theme of a particular technique that we wanted to highlight, not as much for the particular technique, but what we were able to bring out of it. So I'd like to show the technique quickly.
Here we see an officer using a seatbelt in order to restrain another individual. The effectiveness of this is based on his ability to control 2 quadrants of his body, the upper right and the upper left, by using a grip over his shoulder against his neck and underneath the armpit. This allows him to flare out his elbow. Can you flare your elbow, please? Your right elbow. Which allows him to control the arm, all without actually putting any pressure on the carotid. If he switches to both arms underneath the armpits, he still has a decent amount of control, but can't actually control the suspect's head. This makes it difficult for him to control the individual and can start moving his head back and forth, potentially headbutt. He has access to both of his hands, whereas the officer cannot control the suspect's hands from this position. If he takes both arms over the neck, not only can this unintentionally become a carotid restraint, but it's also extremely easy for the individual to turn into him, grip his hand, and then start to go on the attack. Here we see a high elbow position from the seatbelt. Despite common misconceptions that this constricts the carotid artery, it doesn't. His left elbow is not in a position to sufficiently restrict circulation to the brain. His right elbow is nowhere near his other carotid. In this position, we are completely safe while handling a suspect without having to worry about any kind of restricted blood flow.
Yeah, I'm here. What do you need? Get his legs, control his legs. All right, I got you. Need to get him on his stomach. Okay. On your stomach, on your stomach, on your stomach, on your stomach, on your stomach. Hey, I need to clear my left leg.
Okay. All right, I got your left leg.
Okay, so we want to talk about a common misconception with regard to how a seatbelt grip differs from other grips that could be construed as carotid or actual direct carotid attacks. A simple example of this is the inversion of the seatbelt grip, where you can see that my hands are clasped together almost identically to the seatbelt grip from the back, where instead of applying pressure to his neck, I'm actually applying pressure to his jaw. In no way, shape, or form am I restricting blood flow to the carotid. This is a controlled maneuver using the exact same grip as before. Compare this to a grip where his arm makes contact, his shoulder and potentially his biceps will make contact with his carotid. Now, my grip has changed, and the positioning of my arms has changed in such a way that when I apply pressure, particularly from the opposite side of his body, I can initiate a direct attack on the carotid. Counter this with, can you sit up please? And face that way. Seated. Where, again, I use the exact same grip. No matter how high I go with this grip, there's no actual carotid restraint or carotid cutoff. Compare this, as unlikely as this is, to a grip here where I apply the exact same maneuver as I did previously from the side control position, where I can initiate a carotid restraint relatively easily. No matter how hard I grip here, when gripping appropriately, there's no actual pressure on his carotid. I cannot physically choke him unconscious here or apply pressure to the trachea when my hands are gripped or when my hands are in position.
So once we reviewed the technique that we found was similar to several agencies and specialists, we did look at some takeaways from this style. For a pro, this does allow officers to maintain control from the back position, which is similar to where a carotid restraint would be applied. It can be used as a takedown from a standing position. And it can be used to control from a ground position, so either from both positions. But we did identify certain issues that was still an issue. Subjects do remain conscious and possibly combative throughout the technique. And for solo officers, there was no identified cuffing techniques for a combative subject without that secondary officer. So when we're trying to wrap up and bring some sort of recommendations, we wanted to identify the fact that maybe not exactly this particular technique is what we are recommending, but more likely we came to this conclusion. Recommendation of multiple officer, single combative subject training. such as the seatbelt or any other style of technique which teaches two or more officers how to work as a team in controlling a combative suspect successfully. With the removal of the carotid restraint, the recommendation for entering ground controllers as a required technique during perishable skills training. Adopting control holds into ground control techniques. They're currently held mainly in the standing position. And the final recommendation, we felt it was paramount to continue teaching law enforcement the defense of the carotid restraint if applied in any position to them. So that concludes my presentation. I could take any questions.
Questions, comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Boyd.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. So my question is now my interpretation of what just happened here is that you talked to subject matter experts, and this was one of the techniques that kind of came about. Are we going to continue to search for other things or techniques that officers will be able to use, or have we kind of honed in on this particular one?
So again, this particular technique was just a common theme that many of the experts that we brought to our group either experienced, knew about, or trained in. And in the end, we felt maybe it wasn't the technique itself that we wanted to identify as a recommendation, but the concept of begin the push for training our law enforcement officers in the techniques of multiple officer teamwork in taking a combative suspect down together. Most techniques are singular officer, singular suspect, with probably just individual agencies on their own doing any type of multiple officer team techniques together. So this is just a technique. It could be expanded to probably an infinite amount of styles, but what we wanted to bring together was the push for multiple officers training together.
Thank you. Yes. I'm sorry, I have one more question.
If I may, I'm sorry.
Let's see. Commissioner Boyd, is there anything else?
Yeah, I do have one other request. As you all know, I mean, the officers there that were demonstrating that are, I could tell that they're quite fit. They're SAC PD officers, so I know them well. I think that we also need to put some consideration into techniques that will be applicable for female officers. Most of us are smaller stature and don't have, some may not have the same amount of strength. So technique is going to be extremely important for us. So in moving forward, I'd like to have that consideration when we look at different types of techniques.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyd. Okay. Mr. Alvarez.
Yes, I'd like to just add that this isn't something that we're advocating to start teaching. It's just something we're throwing out there as we explore ideas. And I think the direct answer to your question, Commissioner Bowie, is hopefully we're not going to stop and look at other methods as well. This is just one of, I'm sure, countless other opportunities out there as we start the exploration process.
Madam Chair, if I may piggyback on what Director Alvarez said, historically, Commissioner Bowie, with the exception of the carotid control hold, the commission has not advocated nor endorsed any specific method. So you could have the Koga method, the Cameron method, the FBI method, the Gracie brothers. As a comparison with firearms, we don't advocate any specific model of firearm or brand. It's rather generic. So, but we can move forward and look towards specific techniques and working with the specified experts. But I just want to just illustrate the fact that we don't have a specific technique that we endorse on how to do a wrist lock or a twist lock or anything to that effect.
Thank you. Commissioner Brazil?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, and I know he mentioned it at the end, that it's not just about we eliminated the carotid, but we're also trying to stay away from the trachea. And I know he did mention that at the end, but as we go through these techniques that they mentioned that we're trying to stay away from that whole vulnerable neck area as well. That'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Long?
I'm just curious, Manny or Scott or anyone, Maria, in the wake of the chaptering of the bill outlawing the carotid hold, has there been a push from the field that you're aware of or from academy instructors as to the need for a replacement that would, would take the place of this? Are you hearing anything at all in terms of urgency?
Commissioner Long, anecdotally, yes. The reality is that was a tool, the use of force continuum for officers to use. So yes, anecdotally, the profession has definitely expressed an interest in finding alternative techniques that can be appropriately utilized on suspects or individuals that not only can prevent injury to the individual, but also reduce the level of injury to the officers as well.
I would have to echo that and agree with Scott Loggins that there is, and I would think that Commissioner Berg may even speak to this better than I can. For me, being in law enforcement, I was a larger stature and I could do some different things physically, but when you are dealing with individuals who are shorter, maybe not as strong, there needs to be some alternatives instead of resorting to the weapons on your belt. So again, it needs to be looked at and we need to find some kind of options for our people.
And Madam Chair, if I may add on to both Scott and Maria, we've had a lot of internal discussions about, just obviously arrest and control alternatives to the carotid. Yes, we have had some that have asked, hey, so what are we going to replace? We're losing a tool in the tool belt. Some of the discussions that we've had is how do we make people more confident in using control techniques so that they don't have to use other options that are more lethal or more that may cause injury. So we have had some of those discussions, and we have had some comments and requests from the field as to now what do we do? So yes, I think it is a righteous discussion to have as to what else we can add in terms of training, either new techniques or to build confidence in individuals using some of those techniques.
Thank you. Ferris? Thank you.
I think one of the things we brought up last time too is maybe in the academies, changing how we do control techniques and stuff, and to start teaching, more of maybe a jiu-jitsu mindset where it's about technique, right? Like Sandoval said, not to automatically go for what's on your belt, but when something's not working, to have that automatic, okay, I can do this next, it's going to control. And I'm more concerned about the, CHP and the rural, the sheriff's deputies that don't have 3 or 4 guys that can be there in, 5 minutes. Like, we're out there for a long time by ourselves. So I echo everything that everybody else has said, but I think we really need to consider changing our techniques in the academy and start there and start getting them more comfortable with that. And like we talked about before, use of force never looks pretty, no matter, even when they're demonstrating that, it still doesn't look good. So I think we just have to get used to that too. That it's not going to look good when we're wrapping our arms around people and trying to get them to the ground. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this subject?
I do have to say that I wasn't calling Commissioner Berg short. I was just saying that I know that she's applied it a couple times in the past.
Commissioner Berg, do you want to respond to that? Or are we good?
No, we're good, other than I am short. Y'all got to know that I am.
All right.
I'll own it.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're on this. Let me just make sure. Okay, thank you. This time I will call upon Legislative Liaison Public Information Officer Megan Katafi to provide us a report reflecting new laws and legislation impacting post. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Dudley and Commissioners. When I last spoke to you all in June, I had indicated how different the legislative session has been in 2020. The legislature concluded their session on August 31st, and the governor either signed or vetoed legislation by September 30th. There were many bills on police reform that did not make it off the Assembly or Senate floor, and many others that did not receive his signature. This only indicates the work that will be forthcoming in the next session. My handout in the agenda, and it's also on the screen, indicates the status of all the bills that Post was tracking throughout the session. There were several bills that were signed that do deserve some attention, so I'll go over those briefly. Assembly Bill 846, this bill updates the government code on peace officer minimum standards to include that peace officers be free from any physical, emotional, or mental condition, including bias against race or ethnicity, gender, nationality, religion, disability, or sexual orientation that might adversely affect the exercise of the powers of a peace officer. That's straight from the bill language. This bill also requires Post to study, review, and update our regulations and associated screening materials to incorporate the identification of explicit and implicit bias by January 1st of 2022. Assembly Bill 1196, this bill prohibits the authorization of the use of the carotid restraint or chokehold. Assembly Bill 1506, this bill states the Attorney General shall investigate incidents of an officer-involved shooting resulting in the death of an unarmed civilian. DOJ shall also create a police practices division by July 1st of 2023. Where upon request, any law enforcement agency can request a review of their deadly force policy. And the final bill I wanted to discuss was Assembly Bill 1945. This bill adds public safety dispatchers or public safety telecommunicators to the government code to be considered a first responder. This does not change any training or other requirements. The legislature is out until December when they will welcome any new legislators following the upcoming election. They will begin their work for the next two-year session in January of 2021. In the interim, a new committee, the Assembly Select Committee on Police Reform, has formed. This committee is chaired by Assemblymember Gibson, and its members were chosen by the Speaker of the House, Anthony Rendon. Their first meeting was on October 14th and included open discussion with several educators, police chiefs, attorneys, and activists. Topics discussed were hiring standards, including the topic of if peace officers should be required to have a higher level of education, police training for both in-service and the academy level, crowd management, decertification, qualified immunity, and many more topics were discussed at that initial meeting. I expect much more to come from this committee as discussions continue. Also of note, the governor's policing advisors issued a report with recommendations on improving law enforcement's response to protests and demonstrations. All that information was disseminated to you last week. And as we delve into the next session, I've had some discussions with various legislative staff surrounding the topic of higher education requirements for peace officers, how to recruit more women and minorities, and also regarding hate crimes, racial profiling, decertification, and crowd management. All these conversations lead me to believe we will have a very busy start to 2021. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Donlin, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. If I miss it, I'm sorry. Has Post been asked to testify in front of this committee?
We have not.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, thank you. Let me just find out, Advisory Chair Barron, did the Advisory Committee have any comments or any of the items provided in the consent section of the agenda? Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did have some discussions. They were all positive discussions regarding what you guys were discussing today. I know some of them were brought up. In regards to some of the online training, there was a couple of our advisory members were very thankful to Post and complimentary to Post regarding what they've been able to take away from it. I know there was conversation regarding online again and the increase on how many people were taking the courses. I know on item number 17, one of the conversations was that it was a good tool. It was a good start for Post to bring forward and offer, but they were also, like the commission today, were asking for additional tools on a tool belt to help out. And I know they understand they took away, obviously, the crowd hold, and that we need more tools on that. And as far as the legislative report, I know PJ Webb, one of our advisory members, brought up two things. One was AB 1353. He was concerned about that it made the probationary period for school police officers almost a 6-month period. And I know post probation was 12-month period. And also Mr. Webb brought up the fact that they're having a hard time dealing with them having to defund or working against school police. And he was obviously encouraging everyone to assist. I know CCLEA has been very big on assisting with that also. And in regards to legislative,
I think I remember that coming up yesterday and Megan saying she would look into that. So yes, thank you. We certainly will look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Please go on. Was that it, Commissioner?
If you give me 1 second, I'm going through my notes to,
Sure.
not to repeat too much of what was said today. A lot of the comments were almost echoed by our committee on the stuff that the commissioner said and what we discussed. Yes, that should be it for us. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. I know we'll have some further discussion in a few minutes. As that was the last item of consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent items?
Motion, McMahon.
Is there a second?
Second, Donlin.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano,
Yes.
Moore, Moore,
Commissioner Moore? Okay, please go on.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez, Tubbs,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, now the next is going to be our finance. So now the motions passes, and the next will be our finance committee meeting. And after we do that, before we get, and we'll take a 10-minute break before we get into Basic Training Bureau. So let's talk about financial report. Commissioner Long.
Thank you. October is generally kind of the time for budget doldrums, so there are only a couple of noteworthy points to be made, I think. And Tobias, in terms of slides, could you have the contract slides ready to go? I think those are the only slides we need to use is the contracts. So number one, as we discussed in June and we don't need them right now, just the contract slides at the very end of, I think it's at the very end. If you could find those. As we discussed in January and February, the governor and the legislature made post whole, back-to-back $82 million budgets. This is no small feat considering the COVID pressures on the general fund and the continuing decade-long decline of the state penalty fund, which we keep talking about. But continued success, budget success will likely intensify given the ongoing state penalty fund slide, which is about 55% of the post budget, and the COVID-related pressure on the general fund, which will be considerable. General fund's about 43% of the post budget. There is a spot of good news that came out yesterday. The Department of Finance reported state revenue intake was about $8 billion above projections. So that's great news for the entire state, but also for post. Probably the only point worth discussing, and I know Manny wants to address this to some extent. Again, as discussed in June, due to COVID, reduced training allowed post to revert about $15 million from the 2019 budget to the general fund, as well as redirecting $10 million for distance learning related to such things, procedural justice and de-escalation. And this ongoing COVID-related training delays or lack of the ability to get the training out and have people come for training has resulted in about an $8 to $10 million year-to-date unspent reserve that Post has. That will be of, I'm sure, discussion with the Department of Finance coming up, whether to revert those funds, whether to reappropriate those funds, or to what extent we'll be able to get those funds out for training given the COVID problems. I think, Manny, if we can get those, Tobias, if you can get the contracting slides up. Manny, I think you wanted to address the contract spending status, because as you can see in these contracts, while much of the balances have been executed, they've not been spent, largely due to COVID-19. This is what leads to the $15 million budget reversion from last year and the current, let's say, $8 to $10 million balance that we're looking at right now. Man, you referred to this earlier, so if you want to address some of the specific contracts and the difficulty in getting the money out, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Long. So as we mentioned yesterday during the Finance Committee, the first thing is in the spring, April and May of last year, when we were starting to deal with COVID in a big way, and the budget was very questionable for the next year based on the expenditures that the state was going to incur due to COVID and the cuts. We amended most of our training contracts for fiscal year 1920 to take us through December of this year, December 20th, because they were set to expire June of 2020. So we're still operating with 1920 money for our training contracts. However, COVID has definitely had a significant impact, and I think that is demonstrated with our training contracts. So as you could see, we executed training contracts in 2019, and that's in that third column, to the amount of $18,589 and $18.5 million. To date, we have only expended or been invoiced for a total of $9.4 million. That's it. So obviously we could still reduce that number as invoices come in, but we do have leftover training monies for 2019-20. And essentially it hits on two pots of money, right? It hits the training contract money. That's training delivery money. It's for entities such as the Museum of Tolerance to deliver training. It's for the delivery of our ICI detective courses. but there's a back end component, which is the travel reimbursement requests that agencies submit to us to get to that training, to pay for their travel, to pay for their lodging. That also has taken a significant hit, so to speak, or we haven't expended all of those monies. To give you an idea, one of the other slides, in terms of January 1 through December 31 of 2019, we expended almost $26 million in travel reimbursement requests. This year, for the first 10 months through October 22nd, we spent $6.9 million. So it's hitting both our training contracts and our local assistance reimbursement. We still have significant funding in the 1920 budget for the remainder of the next 3 months. And we also have additional funding for 2021 for training contracts that will also be impacted as we move forward. Thank you, Commissioner Long.
Commissioner Long?
Thank you, Manny. Yeah, I think that, the $10 million reversion from last year, or the $15 million reversion actually, and then a potential smaller reversion or reappropriation for coming up that will be decided in the January budget, oftentimes is, the inability to get money out is looked upon dubiously by the legislature and the administration. I just don't think that will be the case. Obviously, COVID has wreaked great havoc on many departments, but certainly on Post and the ability to get training out. So from our discussions yesterday, I think Post is fairly well positioned going into the January budget releases. And that would be the end of the finance report.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Is there a motion to approve this report?
Brazil. Second, Moore.
Okay, did you get the first? Okay. Okay, I think we have Doyle as the first and Moore as the second. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do a 7-minute break now. I know you're all laughing inside, so we'll be back at 12:30, and we hope to be all done by 1:15, but let's see what happens when we get back. See you at 12:30.
Commissioner Dudley, we see you eating.
That's exactly why I went a little bit off screen. I had to get something in my stomach. Oops.
Commissioner Dudley, Chair. This is Ed Madrano.
Join your parents.
Madam Chair, this is Ed Madrano. I have to leave, unfortunately, for graduation, so I apologize.
Thank you for joining us, and say hi to your parents.
Thank you.
Ready? Okay, it's 12:30. Time to finish up. We're now going to get a report from the Basic Training Bureau. Item D is a report on the proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1005, Basic Course Waiver, Application 2.267. At this time, I will call upon Law Enforcement Consultant Julie Gorwood, Basic Training Bureau, to provide us a report on this item. Thank you, Julie.
Good afternoon. The basic course waiver process is an option for peace officers from other states to meet the regular basic course training requirement. Applicants submit documentation of prior law enforcement training and service. The basic course waiver process compares entry-level and in-service training to the California requirements. Applicants who meet the minimum training requirement can proceed to the basic course waiver assessment process, which assesses job knowledge and skills levels. The proposed revisions would update the basic course waiver application form to make it consistent with regulations. One example of the updates is the changes made to learning domains 26, 41, and 43 that were approved by the Office of Administrative Law and became effective on October 1st. All the changes requested on the form are regulatory changes that were previously approved by the Commission and OAL. The basic course waiver form was put on the Commission agenda in case OAL did not approve certain changes on the 9-page form. Last month, the form was submitted as a Section 100 non-substantive change to the Office of Administrative Law. During that review process, there was one change made to the basic course waiver form that is not on the form you received as a part of the agenda. On the screen, as you guys can see, on page 2, under step 3, the red strike through of testing was replaced with the red strike through of examination BCWE to match the original form filed with the Office of Administrative Law in 2019. As of this morning, before the commission meeting, we received the OAL notification that those Section 100 changes were approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Did the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
Madam Chair, we felt that this was consistent bringing us to current regulations, and we recommend it for approval by the committee, by the commission. I apologize.
Is there a motion to approve the changes to the basic course waiver application as described in the staff report?
McMahon.
Thank you. Second?
Romero, second.
Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Sorry, yes.
thank you. Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon, Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano,
He's gone. Thank you.
Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion passes. Okay, now we're going to go on to item E, which is a report on the restructuring of the advisory committee. At this time, I would like to call upon Assistant Executive Director Scott Loggins to provide us with information on this item, and then also give us your description of what happened yesterday, what the suggestions were from the advisory committee. I'm going to ask Mr. Benton to listen carefully. And Mr. Barron, if there's anything you disagree with, I'll call on you next. But I think after that hour-plus discussion yesterday, we're all on the same page. But let's hear from Scott. Scott?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your patience as I go through this. We've been going down this path for approximately 2 years now. The short history is when Post started, better part of 60 years ago. They created a subordinate committee to essentially serve as the eyes and ears of not only law enforcement, but the community to provide input, recommendations, and guidance to the commissions to assist them in their decision-making. As the years have progressed, there's been a constant evolution of the parties that serve on the advisory committee, the specific direction and expected outcomes of the committee, which leads us to where we are here today. Approximately 2 years ago, staff proposed to the commission that we look at a restructuring of the committee, primarily to make sure that the, the members were contemporary and represented all the vast interests across the entire 100,000 plus peace officers in the California, as well as 40 million citizens that we serve now as well. So the proposal you have before you has been around for a couple of years, and this is the latest iteration. We had a very robust discussion with the advisory committee, and I think we came to about a 90% consensus as to with respect to the recommendations. So our specific recommendations to the commission are fourfold at this point, and I will explain them as we actually go through the actual motions. But the specific questions, motions that staff, or I will ask on behalf of staff for this commission to entertain. The first motion will be whether or not we actually want to restructure the committee, which is just a slight restructuring and repurposing of a few of the committee members. If this commission decides to go forward with that, then I will ask for the chair to provide a motion to codify the recommended protocols that staff have devised, as well as at the request of Commissioner Moore, we created a specific statement on this commission's commitment to diversity and inclusion with respect to representation on the board. And after that, there will be two supplementary motions that are contingent on the first two with respect to renewing the terms of some of the current committee members who will remain on the committee for another term, as well as 3 prospective committee members who've either submitted a nomination for themselves or who have respected or have received a nomination from their respective employing agency. So with that, I will yield to you, Madam Chair. I'd be more than willing to walk you through any of these motions and discuss things from the perspective of staff. I will advise that yesterday there was a robust discussion within the committee itself. The committee asked for 2 minor revisions to staff's recommendation regarding staffing. The specific changes that they requested were as follows. One of the recommended repurposed positions was going to go to what we called a contemporary law enforcement peace officer position. And there was a robust discussion regarding the organization known as CCLA that represents what we would maybe term as non-conventional peace officers that have a unique skill set and mission that is somewhat dissimilar from that of uniformed law enforcement officers. And the request of the advisory committee was to retain that position and convert one of the contemporary positions over to that. So essentially it would keep Mr. Barron's position on the committee for the time being. The other request from the dispatch representation was to modify the staff's recommendation that it convert to a contemporary dispatcher to allow for a retired dispatcher as an opportunity as well. The secondary part of that was that the nomination for any dispatcher be vetted through the Public Safety Dispatch Advisory Council. With that, Madam Chair, I'll yield to you and be more than willing to entertain any questions.
Great. Let's first start with, are there any questions?
This is Donlin.
Yes, please.
The last portion of that is that change is now a serving dispatcher and a retired dispatcher, 2 people on the same committee, or is it the person can be either serving or retired?
It is the latter. To clarify, the staff's recommendation is that we retain a contemporary dispatcher, and the thought process of staff was that we wanted a contemporary boots on the ground representation for either the peace officer positions or the dispatch position. The request from the current dispatch representation is that we modify that to allow either a retired dispatcher or a current contemporary dispatcher. So 1 position.
Commissioner Tubbs, did you have a question or comment?
If someone else does, I could weigh it because I wasn't here 2 years ago, so I have several questions.
Okay, Commissioner Donlin? Did you have another question?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We're trying to read Zoom. Okay, we're going to go back to Commissioner Tubbs. Let Commissioner Long, looks like he has a question or comment, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott, just quickly, could you explain maybe what the thinking was in terms of the two contemporary law enforcement positions, that they both be active line or first level supervisory as opposed to, I guess, management? I know you've expressed that there's a sense of urgency to get more boots on the ground, but can you walk me through that a little bit? Why you would exclude, for example, someone other than first line?
The reason for that is this commission itself has representation from either veteran law enforcement officers, current people who are currently in high-level administrative positions, or even agency heads. What we were looking for is somebody who sees things from the same lens, but maybe a different shade of that lens. And from staff's perspective, we think that it would be nice to get that viewpoint from, the deputy sheriff who's answering calls for service in the North County at 3 a.m, from the municipal PD employee who's dealing with calls for service, in a highly populated city, from somebody who maybe is not insulated from what is going on in the streets just by nature of the fact of the position they're in. The reality is we have numerous peace officers on the committee and on the commission, but they deal with greater and different types of issues than maybe the frontline officers deal with. And we thought it would be appreciative of their perspective. I'll use myself as an example. I was a peace officer years ago. I've not made an arrest in a decade. So I think if I were to get a perspective on what it's like to make an arrest, conduct an investigation, I would prefer somebody who's does it on a daily basis rather than somebody like myself who hasn't done it in over a decade.
Okay, so currently then as you have the proposal would be the specialized law enforcement, the PORAC position that would be retained, but the CCLEA would replace what was originally recommended to be an additional PORAC appointment. Is that correct?
That is correct. Staff is okay with that because that is still, it would be representation by people who are current in the profession at that time.
Has there been, I'll just finish up, but has there been a sense from the advisory, maybe Art, and you can answer this, maybe, has there been a sense from the advisory committee that they need more, what Scott likes to call boots on the ground? Has that been a push from I'm not aware that that's been a concern of the commission. Has that been a concern of the advisory committee, Arden?
Commissioner Long, that question has come up numerous times in the past, and it is not, because at our level, we discussed this, and it's very difficult to identify what boots on the ground would be at that point. And it does make variances with where you work. I think to answer that, no. And also, I want to make a quick correction. CCLEA is not a nomination from PORAC. They're two different organizations.
No, I'm aware of that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But no, sir, there isn't.
Okay. So then, Scott, I guess my question, and no hill for me to die on here whatsoever, but it's simply if there's not a push for more boots on the ground perspective from the advisory committee, and I haven't heard one from the commission, I'm a little unclear as to why those two positions are narrowed down to just, as you say, boots on the ground. That's all. That's my comment.
Commissioner Long, I'm one of those people who's advocating for more boots on the ground.
Okay.
And I think there was a discussion previously with other commissioners who also felt that way. So there are people who are, at least I know that I feel that way.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions on that before we go to Commissioner Tubbs? Commissioner Tubbs?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a couple of questions, just to make sure I'm clear. My first question being, it makes absolute sense why a post-commission advisory committee would have folks from law enforcement on it. That's logical. I guess I'm struggling with in terms of the role and function and everything I've read in the staff report, but even on our website, in regards to the role of the advisory committee. Why is there not, or if I'm missing, if there is more sort of public folks on the committee who aren't necessarily associated with any of the, I think, 10 or 11 law enforcement associations?
Scott, go ahead.
Thank you for bringing that up. There are current, as we stand right now, there are 2 public positions, but quite frankly, the only persons who were interested in serving on those in that capacity were retired peace officers. So that is in the current construct now. If I can go back to some of the discussions on an earlier agenda item that Director Alvarez brought up, in every facet of curriculum development, the public is involved, whether they serve as a stakeholder or subject matter expert. It's all vetted throughout the public. That certainly is the addition of public members is something that we certainly can entertain if that's something the commission would desire. One of the challenges is a lot of the agenda items and curriculum that they review is highly technical in nature and stuff that is probably better understood by people with a peace officer background, but nevertheless, we can entertain that if that's the direction the commission would like to go.
Yeah, well, I would argue that, and absolutely, that's why it makes sense for a lot of folks from law enforcement to be on the advisory board. But given the makeup of the post commission, which is majority law enforcement, not exclusively law enforcement, I would imagine that it'd be wise for the advisory committee to reflect that and appreciate the public members who stepped up, who have law enforcement backgrounds. And I think to the earlier discussion we had about sort of our re-up of publicity and our new budgetary items to really do deep marketing, I think part of that will be to allow people to know that these opportunities exist. And to your concern about technicality, maybe it's calling out either an ACLU, a LULAC, an NACP, or all 3 as folks who should also have representation on the advisory committee, much like we have for the other sort of associations, just to make sure we have a balance of perspectives in terms of giving advice to the post commission. And then my second question, and I read through the staff report, I couldn't find it. Is there a limit on the number of people that can serve on the commission advisory board? Is there like a cap?
Yeah, the answer is no. Unlike the commission that you sit on, sir, which is codified in statute within the penal code, this committee serves exclusively at the pleasure of the commission. So the short answer is it could be a committee of 1, it could be a committee of 100. It's exclusively the decision of the commission.
Absolutely. Well, I would strongly suggest, particularly looking at the reappointments, and as you mentioned, both of the public serving members are also retired public servants who spent time in serving us well in law enforcement, that we have to have at least a couple of spots for folks in the public who aren't former peace officers for perspective. And if there's no cap to do that, I'm not sure why we wouldn't entertain that in the interest of ensuring that our advisory committee is as inclusive and reflective of the state. And then my last question was in terms of the diversity, the commitment to diverse representation statement. And I know it reads in the second clause that the commission will not discriminate against nor prefer any applicant for a position based upon classification protected by state or federal law. And I'm just wondering about the insertion of that clause, particularly with Prop 16 on the ballot, which would allow for sort of affirmative action to make sure that committees, boards, commissions, et cetera, actually reflect the diversity of the state. So if Prop 16 passes, will that be reflected in this commitment to diversity?
The answer, it could. You bring a good point. As it stands, the reason for that language is that was taken straight out of Article 1, Section 30 of the California, Section 31 of the California Constitution. So the language it comports with what is constitutional as it stands today. Should the election change that and the prohibition against discrimination is removed from the California Constitution, then of course we can change that. But that was exclusively why we want to reflect what is currently the law and Constitution.
No, absolutely. I think my question reflected an understanding of that. And I would just also argue that I'm not sure Prop 16 is about allowing discrimination. I think it's more about allowing opportunity. But again, thank you for your work. But I would again strongly urge, particularly for the sake of legitimacy, that we find ways to have public members, if it needs to be technical experts, someone from the ACLU, someone from LULAC, someone from NACPs, or any other advancement project, any other civil rights groups to be part of this, to be part of the advisory board for post.
Yeah, I will share this regardless of what happens in November. It's the intent of staff to ensure diversity and inclusion, a broad perspective to represent all four corners of the state.
And Commissioner Tubbs, just to give you a little bit more history on this, a couple of years ago, we were really struggling for funds and we were looking at potential cuts. One of the ways to save money was to reduce the number of people on the advisory committee. We did some research to determine what that was, what was the minimum number, et cetera. Turns out there is no law, statute, rule, or policy that says we even have to have an advisory committee. That is a decision of the commission. So if we do start adding additional spots, understand that there is a fiscal piece to that. I think it ends up being, with the 3 separate meetings, a few $1,000s. Does that sound about right, Scott?
Sounds about correct.
Okay, so which is not to say that we shouldn't do it. I just wanted to let you know historically how we got to this place.
And if I can respond, Madam Chair, I'm not even necessarily proposing we add the number of members. I just think before we nominate 2 public members, we should be very mindful that we will have an advisory committee that has no one from the public that doesn't have a law enforcement background, which I think is problematic and contrary to the mission of the commission, the mission of the advisory commission, and the values of our great state.
Yeah, I understand completely. I just wanted you to know where initially that all came from in terms of what size should the advisory committee be. Now, if there aren't any other questions or comments, I'm going to ask, sorry,
Commissioner Moore?
Commissioner Moore.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. I thought when I sat in on the meeting yesterday, I thought that in the comments or someplace I had heard that the advisory committee should reflect this committee. Is that about right, Scott? Was something to that referenced?
I can't recall exactly. It may have been said, but as the chair said, the commission you sit on, sir, is actually codified in statute as to what specific positions are. The decision as to representation on the committee is exclusively at the discretion of the commission itself. Mr. Barron may have more clarity on that, but I don't recall the exact context of any discussion. Then it may or may not have happened.
No, I believe Commissioner Tubbs made it clear that should be reflective of, but I don't recall us having that conversation. I said, Mr. Moore, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is there anything else on this discussion? If not, my next plan is to have Scott walk us through the variety of motions and choices. So anything else? Okay, Scott, walk us
Well, Madam
slowly.
Chair, the first motion I will ask this commission to entertain is as follows. It will be a motion to approve staff's recommendation regarding the composition of the advisory committee. Now, there's 2 components that, and Mr. Barron may want to add further insight on. The 2 specific deviations or modifications the committee asked for is to convert a contemporary law enforcement peace officer position for the California Coalition of Law Enforcement Association, the CCLEA position. This would retain Mr. Barron on the committee. It would just repurpose one of the positions. The other ask was that the contemporary law enforcement public safety
Just going one
dispatch,
ask at a time, though? Is this part of the same ask?
part of the same ask.
Okay. Keep
Part of
going.
this, the other ask was to convert the public safety dispatcher position so that it could be represented by either a current public safety dispatcher or a retired public safety dispatcher. And then that person would be vetted through the Public Safety Dispatch Advisory Council. Staff's recommendation is that we retain the current contemporary position, just so we have that boots on the ground perspective.
And to address Commissioner Tubbs' question, how many public spaces do we have?
We have 0 on the committee now. The commission could create 1 or 2 if they would so desire.
Okay. So right now, we need a motion.
We have 2 right now, but if we change it, there will be 0.
So with the change that you just recommended, would that take us down to 0?
It would take us down to 0 public members. The
So right
commission has the
now,
authority
there are
to-
2 public member positions on the advisory committee. The suggestion is that one of them go to dispatch, present or past, and the other go to, what was the title of the other
the
position?
CCLA position, which would retain Mr. Barron's
Okay.
organization.
So does anyone have a motion? Everybody understands now what's at stake. Please.
May we ask a question of our colleague, Scott?
Yeah.
There was a position for a private, were we not talking about a private presenter position, Scott, with one of the positions?
That's one of the public member positions was being converted to a private presenter representation.
Okay.
So the total number is not changed, just there's been some repurposing of about 3 or 4 of them.
Pretty clear? So back to the commission. Does somebody want to make Commissioner Brazil and maybe Commissioner Long? Commissioner Long, did you have a comment too? Let's go to Commissioner Brazil first. Please, Commissioner.
Hey, Scott, can you summarize real quick because I got lost? Which public positions are you converting and what to?
If you bear with me, I don't have my reading glasses. The converted positions, we initially were going to absorb Mr. Barron's position, CCLA, into the specialized law enforcement position. We were going to repurpose one of the public members' positions to a private presenter position. And we were going to repurpose another of the public member positions for a contemporary dispatcher position.
But I have to add that that was at the will of the commissioners when we were in
Correct.
February.
That was
a direction that the commission gave us to repurpose those individual positions for the public positions into those positions.
That is
wasn't
correct. That
staff.
was the direction of the commission at the February meeting.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Long, do you have a question?
No, Scott, if you could just clarify, I'm a little lost too. So under your amended list that's in the agenda, you'd keep those 2 PORAC positions, but you'd repurpose one of the contemporary law enforcement to be the CCLEA position, correct?
That is correct. If I may clarify, the 2 PORAC positions represent 2 different diverse interests. One represents for PORAC in general, and one is unique for the specialized police officers or peace officers.
Yeah.
Any
And
other?
then my only other question would be if Commissioner Tubbs wants to add 2 public members, if that's a motion, given his line of questioning, I would certainly be supportive of that. But
I think there are a couple of ways to consider that. One is to leave the 2 public member positions that we presently have, and therefore not have one of them turned into a private teaching and not have one of them turned into a dispatcher. Or we could make that change that the commission was suggesting in February, and then another motion could be to add 2 more positions to the advisory committee, again, knowing that that will have a fiscal impact. So I think all those are options, Commissioner Long. So who would like to start with the first motion on this? What would that be?
I don't think any of us know what we're voting on.
What was that?
Madam Chair, can I interrupt quickly? Madam Chair, the PORAC represents the specialized law enforcement personnel also. So effectively, we're giving 2 seats to PORAC. Is that what we're talking about?
Scott?
That is correct. PORAC carries 2 seats on this committee at this point.
And obviously the way you've designed it, we're removing CCLEA to give an additional membership or a seat to PORAC. Is that correct?
We're going to retain the 2, well, if the commission approves, we will retain the 2 current PORAC positions and retain the CCLA position as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Barcelona, did you have a motion?
No, because I'm confused. I really don't know that everybody here knows what they're going to vote on. I mean, I'd have to see it just in writing or something so that I would be clear on what I'm voting for.
Okay, I understand that. I probably could explain it again, but I don't think in explaining it that the problem isn't explaining it. It's the complexity of it and the variety of opinions. Mr. Alvarez, do you have a suggestion?
I would like to add the full composition is in the agenda item.
Right.
I'm asking Mr. Alvarez if he has a suggestion. He was whispering and I couldn't hear him and talk simultaneously.
I hate to kick the can down the road because we've been kicking this can down the road for 2 years now. Obviously, we had the agenda item proposed based on the February commission meeting. It got changed yesterday during advisory. I suggest that we redo it. I suggest the advisory committee assist us in rewriting that agenda item with the exact makeup, and then we finalize it. And if it doesn't go through in February, then I think we should just end it and just keep everything the way it is. It's up to the commission to decide who comes on and who comes off in regards to specific individuals. And if the makeup should stay the same with public members, I think we should do it that way. I think we could give it one more attempt, or just fish and cut bait, and just you all get to decide who's on it.
Okay, so let me ask commissioners, we could leave it alone. Okay, in leaving it alone, we have 2 public positions that are open. We could kick the can down the road, have advisory work with Scott, and come up with some other ideas. So can I get your thoughts on whether you want to, let me ask if anybody wants to make a motion to leave it the way it presently is. Hearing nothing. That's not a good idea. So now we'll move on to kicking the can down the road.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
leaving it the way it is with the 2 public member positions, correct?
correct.
Then I would make a motion.
Okay. Is there a second to leaving it the way it is with the 2 public positions?
Brazil.
Who is that, Brazil?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's take a roll call.
Madam Chair, I have a comment on that.
Yes.
I think it's important to have the dispatch representation. Is there a potential where we can add, keep the dispatcher representation in place, maybe cut the PORAC position down from 2 to 1, and then add, kind of split and add 1 more to the committee, which is a public member? That means we would have 2 public members by only adding 1 if we cut the PORAC positions down to 1.
We can do whatever we want. So certainly that would be an option. Right now, we have a motion and that has been made and second on keeping the commission in its present condition. So does anyone have any questions or comments about that motion? And then we can decide on whether to vote that one down and move on to the next one. You know, perhaps Commissioner McMahon's motion. Commissioner Donlin, hang on. Donlin, Doyle, and Brazil all want to speak. Let's start with Donlin.
Yeah, call the question on the motion on the table.
We did that. What am I missing, Barry?
We just have to vote.
Let's just vote.
Okay,
Let's vote.
people are allowed to ask questions. So let me go to Commissioner Brazil.
I was just deferring to Doyle because I think he was going to accept a friendly amendment.
You think he's going to what? Accept a friendly amendment? Commissioner Doyle, is there anything friendly about you today?
You know, I'm from Marin. No, but I like Commissioner McMahon's idea, and I'm willing to change my motion.
Then you'll have to tell me what that changed motion is.
John, help me out.
Happy to help. I think we leave the dispatch in as recommended. We cut the PORAC position from 2 down to 1, and we add 1 public member. That will allow us to have 2 public members, but only adding 1 more to the commission, if you follow me.
Okay, is that your motion, your amended motion, Commissioner Doyle?
That is, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I have a second?
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Wait, let's just see if there's a second to that, and then I'll entertain your question.
Second, Lon.
Okay. Commissioner Berg.
I'm sorry to keep doing this, and I haven't been on the commission very long either. How many total members do we have? And are we allowed to determine how many are on and how many are off?
Yes.
So if we are, then that's great to have the two and then add one for the dispatch. Is that what the final recommendation was?
We can decide. I'll ask Scott to give you the number. We can definitely decide that. The only difference is that it costs us a few $1,000s a year every time we add a member on. As far as I know, that's the only problem. And this year, it's not a problem. It may just be a problem in the future. We can always change this.
Is
Yeah,
that every year? Is
How
that
many
every
pres-
year?
hang on one second. How many members do we presently have?
We currently have 14.
We currently have 14, Commissioner Berg.
And is that every year it costs us a couple of $1,000s or just once in the beginning for like a background?
No,
or something?
every year. That's transportation costs, per diem,
Okay.
et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, we have a first, we have a second. Is everybody clear on what the first and second are? Does anyone need them rephrased? Commissioner O'Rourke?
Does that motion cut the CSLEA position?
Yes?
No. It leaves that, but cuts the PORAC positions from 2 down to 1.
But I thought you added, okay, you wanted a public dispatch, which is the
Right.
added one, right, John?
No,
And-
so it makes it a total of 15 because we're adding one more position to the advisory committee, which would be a public one. We pick up the second public one by cutting down the PORAC positions from 2 to 1, but still leaving the CCLEA or whatever that.
But that's not, I don't think the math is right, John, but I could be off here. There's the CCLA and then there's also the dispatch, so it's 2. You suggesting we keep both of those positions?
Keep those 2, but cut one of the PORAC positions because there should be 2
Okay.
PORAC positions as well, right?
Yes.
Can PORAC accomplish what they need by just one, having one representative?
You want a district attorney to answer that, John? No, I think we're good. I understand your motion. Let's just stick with this unless we have any other questions. Everybody understand the motion? Anybody want further discussion on what the motion and the second is? Commissioner O'Rourke, you had your hand up, but I didn't hear what you had to say. No? Okay. Okay, is everybody clear? Any other questions about this? Okay, so now let's get a roll call.
Barcelona,
I'm not in favor of reducing PORAC's involvement, so I'm a no.
Berg,
Oh, man. Now I'm a little bit confused. I thought we were going to add it on because the math didn't add up. So
One PORAC position, so there are presently 2 PORAC positions. We'd be taking out one of them. There would still be a PORAC representation, but instead of 2, there would be 1.
I'm going to vote no.
Okay?
Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie,
She's not here.
Donilon,
No.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
No.
Tubbs.
No, I think Manny's original suggestion was a good one. It just seems very messy and convoluted now.
You understand, just to be clear, Commissioner Dobbs, you wanted to make sure we had 2 public positions, and this motion allows for 2 public positions.
No, I understood that, but that wasn't all I wanted. That was part of what I wanted. So that's
I'm
what
sorry,
saying.
you what, Michael? What?
No, I understood that completely. I think I also wanted it to be kind of listed out in terms of codified, just like it is for the other law enforcement groups, which I don't think was part of this motion. And I also think if staff had more time to take this feedback and develop something, they could give us something in February that's clean and that satisfies everyone. So that's why I'm voting no.
So Commissioner Tubbs, just to be clear, you would like to have a description of that, the way other things have been described, like a PORAC member?
Yes.
So it would be a public position, it would be a specific public position.
Yes, just being responsive to the concerns about the technical nature of the
Got
event.
it. Thank you. Please go ahead. Was that it for the roll call? Okay, now how did we end up?
We have 8 yeses, 5 nos.
Okay, so the motion carries. Okay, what's next?
Very well. We do have a motion, but I am going to respectfully ask that the commission not take it under consideration because that motion included several pages of policies and procedures that address term limits and codified how to select the new committee members under the construct that was just disapproved.
Okay, so that doesn't make sense anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, having said that, we will certainly, the next time we meet, we will bring forward the mission, role, and commitment to diversity. And that we'll have had the benefit of hindsight since the election will be over, so we can know the way the Constitution will go.
Okay.
So I would assume there will be no motion. We'll let that pass.
Yes. Next.
Very well. My next motion is actually some complicated motion. So given the fact that we are keeping the current construct, there's several letters requesting that the current terms that were expired, but the commission extended, that these people be reappointed. So the first one, Madam Chair, I will ask is, will the commission approve for the California Association of Police Training Officers, CAPTO, may Randy Waltz be reappointed?
So let's take another step back. I don't want to rush through this. So would it make any sense, now that you have a general feeling of where the commission is with this, would it make sense to take on the specifics at the February meeting? So we can get reorganized and clear about what this is. I think Commissioner Tubbs expressed some concern about rushing into this and not really making sure, understanding it. I think other people feel that way too. Would it make sense is to leave this as the one thing we decide today and then kick the can down the road to February to finish this?
We certainly can. The only ask I would have is there's current members whose terms expired a year ago. If the commission would approve an extension of their terms until the February commission. And there is nevertheless one individual that is currently being nominated for the existing construct that I would like them to entertain. That is from the Chancellor's office.
Okay.
So to clarify, I would request a motion to re-extend the terms of those who have been expired that are in the agenda item. We don't need to go by through the names.
Mhm.
Then also take into consideration the nomination for Dr. Weber from the Chancellor's office. And there's 2 public member positions. Maybe we can table until February.
Okay, let's just take those one at a time. So the first one was a suggestion that that people who are presently serving on the committee, that be extended until the February meeting.
That is correct.
Okay, is there such a motion?
McMahon.
Second?
Doyle.
Roll call? Questions, comments? Roll call?
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
who we left, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Okay, now this next one is about the community college representative.
That is correct.
Let's just explain to everybody about that one, and then we'll see if we can finish that one up.
Yes, the current composition of the committee, as well as the proposed composition of the committee, has a position for the California Community College Chancellor's Office that has been unfilled. There's a nomination for Dr. Shinny Weber from the Chancellor's Office asking for approval to be represented on the advisory committee, and staff endorse that and would approve that recommendation.
And just to be clear, what position would that be filling on the advisory committee?
There actually is a spot dedicated for the California Community Chancellor.
Is one spot dedicated for that, and there's nobody else who's seeking that position right now?
That is correct. That is the
Okay.
sole applicant from that
Okay,
committee.
so can we get a motion to approve her?
So moved, Long.
Second?
Second.
Questions? Comments? Please take a roll call.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano,
Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else on this issue?
No, but I believe Director Alvarez had some concerns or comments, but I believe that satisfies it until next time.
Okay, and I also wonder if Mr. Barron is anything he wants to say. So why don't we go to Mr. Barron first and then Mr. Alvarez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I appreciate all the discussion and the decisions made today. I know I've been even in contact with a couple of our committee members as we're having this meeting. We appreciate the topic discussed. I know it's been a long time coming, and I concur with both Commissioner Tubbs, Commissioner Moore, Commissioner Long, Commissioner McMahon, Commissioner Doyle, everyone involved regarding the public member positions. And the addition is, I think it's a great decision. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I was asking Scott, passing a note to get confirmation that this did not have to go through the Office of Administrative Law for regulation change, which it does not. So thank you, Scott, for saying no. If it'll make it simpler for the February commission meeting and then perhaps for future consent items, maybe we'll put together a table that just lists every advisory member and when their term expires so that you all have an idea of who's on advisory, when their terms expire, and which seats need to be filled. I think that'll be easy for us to do as a recurring consent item so you could see exactly who's on the
I
list.
think that would be terrific.
All right.
If I may ask, it appears the challenge is staff were filtering input in devising proposed policies and procedures. Would it be preferable if actually a member of the advisory committee crafted those and presented them to the commission in February so you get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak?
I think you might want to work with Mr. Barron on that.
Okay.
Mr. Barron, does that may sound good?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else on that. Okay. Now, turning several pages, Mr. Alvarez helped me with this. I think we are eliminating F. And now we are at G.
Correct, Madam Chair. We're going to eliminate item F and item H, and we're going to come back with a change on that at the commission meeting in February.
Okay, so we're now on item G. Item G is a report on request to amend Regulation 1005. At this time, I will call upon Staff Service Manager Michelle Weiler, Training, Delivery, and Compliance Bureau, to provide us a report on changes to Regulation 1005. Please.
Good afternoon. Yes, so I am presenting for you a request to amend Regulation 10005 to update the minimum topics for all of our perishable skills, as well as to combine tactical and interpersonal communications into one communications topic and bring that under the perishable skills program, because currently as it stands, it's identified separately as part of the CPTs, but not the PSP requirements. And just a quick overview of what was done. We convened work groups starting in November of last year. So this is a process that's been going on for a year. Only because of COVID, it kind of halted our progress, and then we went to virtual work group meetings to update the guidelines for each of these perishable skills topics. There are minimal updates to arrest control, driver awareness, and firearms. The biggest change that you'll see is that when you look at the way they are listed as minimum topics, the use of force considerations, moral obligations, policies and procedures, those were listed towards the bottom of the list of minimum topics, which doesn't mean that they won't going to be covered, because they're required to be covered, but the subject matter groups, the work groups, opted to move them to the top of the list to prioritize them, because logically when someone's reading a list, whatever's at the top of the list receives priority. So that's the biggest change that you'll see. And then the next big change is, actually that's one of the significant changes. The biggest change is combining the communications topics, and the work group decided that that would be best because the topics as they existed previously overlapped each other with very few differences. And so it's kind of question, why do we have two different courses? Let's make it one course.
Anything else? Okay. Questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion, Donlin.
Second,
McMahon.
questions or comments? Ms. Nunez, please take the roll call.
Barcelona. Berg,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley, Voice.
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore, O'Rourke,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now, that motion passes. Mr. Burton, the Advisory Committee Vice Chair, Art Barron, will report on the Advisory Committee meeting held yesterday. Let me just suggest that you've already given us a piece of what happened yesterday and throughout this meeting today. Is there anything you'd like to add to that for your report?
Madam Chair, two small things. I know Randy Waltz yesterday was very complimentary, and so was I. I didn't get to mention it, but the managers training symposium was excellent. It was done phenomenally, and it was ran well, and post representatives were great. And Randy wanted to acknowledge Andrew Mendoza. In his region, he's in between consultants, and Andrew has stepped up and has been very grateful and helpful to them. So he wanted to make sure that we obviously acknowledge that. And then one of the committee members also, Jamie, talked about it, an upcoming interesting topic that they're working on getting live streams to officers of dispatch calls. And I thought that was noteworthy to talk about. Allowing our officers in the cars, they're going to calls to hear the actual 911 calls was excellent news. And lastly, I know I mentioned this earlier, PJ Webb talked about the AB 1353. He did mention something that kind of stuck out to me. They've established a working group out of the community who's going to evaluate the school police, and it's mainly made up of students. And these students are going to help obviously determine the fate of these school police officers, which is kind of scary in my mind. I just want to share that. I know that PJ Webb was talking about that yesterday. I want to put on everybody's radar. And that should do it, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. So let me see, I'm sorry, I just need to consult one thing. Do I have a motion to accept the advisory committee report?
McMahon.
Is there a second?
Brazil.
Questions, comments? Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call vote.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Brazil, Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes. As to correspondence, there is no correspondence for discussion at this meeting. As to issue K, that has already been discussed. As to new business, at this time, I'd like to call upon Executive Director Alvarez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we are addressing new business item 11. Is that correct? Okay. Really, the only thing to mention is, as we discussed at the at the August commission meeting, the next meeting, we were starting with a new schedule for the commission meeting. As you all know, today we started at 9:30. Effective February, we'll start the commission meeting at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. That'll give us from 1 to 5. And then the second day, Thursday morning, is when we will conclude the meeting. It gives the commission more time to address topics as opposed to cramming them all into an 8-hour day. The Finance Committee will meet that morning on Wednesday morning, I believe at 9 a.m. And then the advisory meeting will be at 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And we'll take a lunch break. They should be done usually by noon, and then we'll start the commission meeting on Wednesday at 1. That's the only thing to mention for the February commission meeting, and obviously we'll send out reminders in the terms in the form of emails. The last thing is the commission meetings are in Pasadena. We do have hotel accommodations set up for that. I guess we will see as we progress in the coming days as to where we are with COVID and whether that is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. But as it stands right now, we still have the contract in place for Pasadena.
So just to be clear, it's going to necessitate people being here on both Wednesday and Thursday. Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
McMahon.
Motion Ramirez.
Okay. McMahon is the first, Ramirez is the second. Questions or comments? Let's take a roll call.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Dewey, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That motion passes. Yes, Scott.
If I may take the liberty to, before you go to closed session, Madam Chair, we received a lot of compliments from Post, but because of COVID and the distancing required, we often don't get opportunities to thank people. I would like to recognize 2 members of our staff who are going to be retiring at the end of the calendar year. These 2 gentlemen have been instrumental in all of the positive change that Post has done over the years, that is often incorrectly credited to the executive office, but is clearly the staff members. But specifically 2 of our bureau chiefs, I'd like to recognize Mr. Ralph Brown and Phil Caparelli for their tremendous contributions to the law enforcement profession. And I know we probably can't have a round of applause digitally, but I think it's appropriately we recognize.
Well,
their
I think we can have a round of applause for those of us in this room, and they can round of applause later. Gentlemen, you have both enriched our law enforcement and our community in general in the state of California. It's been an honor for me to work with both of you, and you will both be missed. Thank you.
Just for technical purposes, just to make sure for the, I'm sorry? For 2022. Okay, I'm sorry. These do not have the 2022 dates on here.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, at the top, we wanted to announce okay, I'm sorry.
I see. Okay.
I should have mentioned the future dates for 2022 because we have to project way out into the future. We're a battleship. We turn very slow. It takes us a while. So we have to project the dates out early. So we have dates scheduled for 2022, February 16, 17, 2022, location to be determined. May 25th through the 26th, 2022 in West Sacramento, and October 19th through the 20th in 2022 in West Sacramento. I should have mentioned that. My
And I think
apologies.
we need a motion just for the fun of it for those 2. So is there a motion to approve those dates for 2022? That was long on the motion. Who was the second? Okay.
Doyle.
Ramirez.
Any questions, comments?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chair. I thought at one point we had discussed possibly coming to the Bay Area. Are those still options or?
Well, I think that could be the TBD, February 16th through 17th.
So I was hoping that would still be on the agenda to also invite community out as well.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
We are happy to do it in another location, including the Bay Area. We worked really, really hard. Both Katie and Carrie worked hard with hotels. We could not get anywhere near the state rate for the hotels. I want to say it was getting close to $300, if I remember correctly, just for the hotel rooms. And that's what pushed us away. But our intent was to do one of the commission meetings this year in San Jose. That was the only issue. I think it would be a great idea to do it in the Bay Area. I know 10, 15 years ago, we did do those meetings in the Bay Area, not alternate them between Southern California and Sacramento. That's the only issue. We're happy to look again to try that.
Well, can I make a suggestion? Barry has the lovely Oakland Hotel that's right downtown. Maybe Oakland could act as a host of. They're much generally their prices are lower than the rest of the Bay.
Commissioner Moore, if you can give them, Carrie or Manny, any suggestions about places, I'm sure they'll contact them and try to make that happen. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so now we had a motion and a second on those 2022 dates. Then we had a question from Commissioner Moore. So back to the roll call on the 2022 dates.
Okay. Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg, Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore,
I'll say no for now.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes. And we will continue to look for a place in the San Jose, Oakland area. Upcoming commission meetings will be February 24th through 25th, either in Pasadena or Zoom. June 2nd through 3rd up here in West Sacramento, October 20 through 21, again, back here in West Sacramento. Much to your sadness, there is no closed session. We'll not be holding a closed session during this meeting. Commissioners, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Hearing nothing, I will call for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a
So-
motion?
Moves to adjourn.
Second?
Berg,
Okay. Any questions or comments? Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call.
Barcelona,
Yes.
Berg,
yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Bowie, Donilon,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Dudley,
Yes.
Yule,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
McMahon,
Yes.
Madrano, Moore,
Yes.
O'Rourke,
Yes.
Ramirez,
Yes.
Tubbs.
Tubbs?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, all of you. I know we are all suffering from Zoom fatigue, but really appreciate everybody's comments today. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.